Tonight's work session is, discussion topic is the proposed Jefferson Parkway toll road. Give a brief overview of what's being proposed by the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority, solicit any input from the public, and take questions and general discussion by the board of trustees.
Great.
The Jefferson Parkway Toll Road is a 10-mile toll road that's being proposed by the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority. The authority is made up of mainly three entities: City of Gold, or not, whoa, City and County, or Jefferson County, City and County of Broomfield, and the City of Arvada. These three entities picked up this project in 2009 after the Colorado Department of Transportation ended their study that they did over 5 years from 2003 to 2008, which was often referred to as the Northwest Corridor Study. CDOT initiated this study in 2003 and ended it in 2008 after it was determined by CDOT that there wasn't enough funding to build the authority, and there wasn't consensus among the different entities, counties and cities that it affected on what needed to be done. So they ended their process, and the authority picked it up in 2009. The 10-mile toll road is proposed. Can you get the lights, Phyllis? It's proposed to go from Highway 128 down to Highway 93. This would complete a proposed Metro Beltway loop, which 3/4 of it is complete with C470, E470, and the Northwest Parkway, which ends just before US 36. This proposed toll road would create an interchange. It's tough to see on this map, but an interchange right about here, which is Indiana, and then another one right about here, which is at Sims, which is near the Rocky Mountain Regional Airport. These two interchanges, primarily this one here at Indiana, which is just a half-mile south of Highway 128, would cause, in our opinion, significant impact to the town of Superior, because you would have traffic coming from the south wanting to head west, maybe to Boulder. They would get off at this interchange at Indiana, get on 128, and then cut through Superior going north on McCaslin. As well as traffic coming from the north-south would cut through Superior on McCaslin, get on the interchange at Indiana, and then cut through to south wherever they're headed, whether it's up the mountains or further south Denver, and get onto the existing toll roads, or E470, C470, and the like. The authority picked up this project in 2009. Like I mentioned, CDOT had studied it for about 5 years, from 2003 to 2008. They ended it with a study.
Since we have some people that might not know all the acronyms, maybe you could tell what
CDOT?
CDOT is.
Yeah. Sorry, it's the Colorado Department of Transportation. Is CDOT, and they were the main entity that was doing the Northwest Corridor study during this 5-year period. And like I mentioned, because of inadequate funding, and unable to get consensus from the different cities of Golden, Arvada, Jefferson County, Superior, Boulder, they dropped moving forward with the project, and in 2009, the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority, which is Broomfield, Arvada, and Jefferson County, picked up the project and started moving forward with it to finish this 10-mile section of road. It'll be a toll road. The authority in 2009 submitted their plans to the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is Dr. Cobb, which was approved as part of the 2035 Transportation Plan.
And once again, not to go into gory detail here, but the 2035 Transportation Plan, do you want to describe what that means?
That is a plan that different entities throughout the Denver metro area can submit to the Denver Regional Council of Governments to be included, and it's a funding plan. So different cities, counties, they submit their transportation projects to the Denver Regional Council of Governments, who has a pot of money, and they allocate funds to the different projects, depending if they get included in the plan. So it could be interchange improvements in a city. It could be, a new improvements to a 2-lane road. Those type of things would get included in this transportation plan. It's a planning document, basically, for the Denver metro area. So DRCOG approved this toll road alignment in 2009, and then the Colorado Department of Transportation also approved the alignment in 2009.
Can I
Yeah.
make a
But it
note?
doesn't mean it's approved, that doesn't mean it's funded. It just means it's in the plans
It's
of
in the
potential.
plan.
It's a potential.
It's
Basically-
required before they can move forward.
So basically what it really
They never
means
move
is the Jefferson Parkway is allowed to be in the metro planning of all the different roads, and they're allowed to build, basically.
Right.
However, they're not allowed to have federal funds.
Right.
So at this point, they are entirely what I would call, they call it a public-private partnership. Public because the entities that are setting up the authority are public, governmental entities. And then private in the fact that they commission a private company to actually design and build the road, like you would your house or something.
So, yeah, and that's on the next page. We'll talk a little bit about their selection of the private company, but some of the recent actions that have happened with regard to this proposed toll road is the City of Boulder and Boulder County have reached agreement, an intergovernmental agreement with Jefferson County to drop their opposition to the toll road in exchange for the purchase of this piece of property here, which is referred to as Section 16. It's a 640-acre piece of property on the southwest corner of the Rocky Flats site, Rocky Flats Refuge site. Boulder and the City of Boulder and Boulder County have long sought to keep that piece, that 640-acre piece of property as open space. Jefferson County is going to contribute $5 million towards the purchase. I think the City of Boulder and Boulder County are each contributing $2 million. And then in exchange for that, the City of Boulder and Boulder County will drop their opposition to the proposed toll road. Both, yeah.
Can I, do you
Sure.
mind? That Section 16 is also in the Jefferson County Master Open Space Plan as a high-value open space that they would like to acquire as well. So they were looking for a partner.
The City of Golden has going to be another city that's impacted because the toll road starts to use existing roadway through through Golden on Highway 93. They've had ongoing negotiations with the authority for the past 3 years, 4 years.
Longer than that.
Longer than that,
Yeah.
probably, yeah. And they continue to have negotiations with the authority, but they haven't reached any consensus yet with them. So currently, I believe they're still opposing it, but they have ongoing negotiations with the authority. Here's an interesting thing about the toll road, which you see here, is once it gets to Highway 128 and heading north, before it connects to the Northwest Parkway, it's got to use existing roadway. So it's got to go through Interlochen, on Interlochen Boulevard, I think it is, through all the stoplights and everything before it connects back up to the Northwest Parkway to the north.
So basically, the only way it connects is through signage. So you're going to be taking rights and lefts and stops and, just to get there, like you do now. So So it's not going to, there's not going to be an extra road that's built specifically.
It's just gonna be an impact on traffic.
Correct.
Huge impact.
So people on the toll road would have to get off the toll road at 128, use existing local roads, and then get back on the toll road at the Northwest Parkway to the north. So they have talked that they have plans to do a separated section through Interlochen at some point, and you see kind of what it might look like here with elevated roadways here. It's a whole total reconstruction through Interlochen if they decide to do that, and it's going to be very expensive. So, so that's currently where that exists right now. So the authority, in at the beginning of 2011, had a bidders conference to solicit proposals for private companies who would come in and do studies to determine if they wanted to build a toll road. As it was mentioned, this would be a private-public partnership, which basically means we would be using public land for the most part, financed by a private company to build it. They did the bidders conference in 2011. They've selected a company, a Spanish company called Isolex, for short, because I'm not going to pronounce that whole name.
Me neither.
But it's a Spanish company that they've selected. They've reached an agreement with them, and that company will start this year to start doing. They have to do a whole bunch of studies. They have to do noise impact studies. They have to do revenue studies to determine if the tolls generated off the toll road are enough to finance the construction. They expect the studies, which we're calling the environmental assessment, but it's other things than just environment, to take 12 to 16 months, maybe more, maybe less. So that would be completed in 2012. Construction to start sometime soon after that, with an estimated 3-year construction timeline, with the completion date of 2015.
So Matt, before you move off
Yeah.
that page there, so environmental assessment usually indicates that there would be a party that has to sign off on the assessment, but without federal funds, that wouldn't be a federal agency. Do you have any idea who would be signing off on the
Well, it
assessment?
could be a federal agent, or it could be the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment as well. And we're talking about the toll road. This is Rocky Flats right here. This basically section of land here. This is Indiana right here. The authority needs to purchase 300 feet of right-of-way on the west side of Indiana, which is the Rocky Flats property, in order to build the toll road. So that's where you would see the biggest study as far as environmental impact.
Would you clarify with the students why Rocky Flats is a contentious piece of property?
So, for history's sake, Rocky Flats is a former federal weapons site.
Nuclear.
Right.
Nuclear.
They Rocky Flats produced plutonium triggers. So there was, needless to say, some very highly
Contaminated.
radioactive material being used here to produce those triggers. And so the question is, when they go in to construct this toll road, they're going to have to do quite a bit of dirt moving in this area here. And so the question is, what kind of impact will that have? What will it release, if anything, into the air? And what kind of concerns those would be for the public. So that's why you'll see quite a bit of study happen in that corridor, I would think, at least by the state.
But Matt, when you say 12 to 16 months for environmental assessment, is that something JPPHA acknowledges must be done?
Well, no,
Well, actually-
their studies, and we put this on here, environmental assessment, but it's other things, revenue generation, noise impacts, So that-
And actually, can I clarify something? This is really important to note, that any environmental assessment, according to the Jefferson Parkway and what they feel is their responsibility, is not for the entire road whatsoever. It's only for the interchanges that they build. So they can build the road through Rocky Flats and have no interchanges in there, and they would not do any kind of environmental assessment there, including, noise, air quality, contaminants, any of that, or wildlife and water issues as well. It's only the interchanges.
And they are, and they're proposing an interchange, right here at Indiana, which is,
Quarter mile from 128 and
will
McCaslin.
affect Rocky Flats property as well right there. So.
Wasn't Rocky Flats changed into a wildlife refuge?
That portion of it.
That
Yes.
portion of it?
That's correct. Let's see. Talked about this street. This is some traffic volumes that we received. These are mainly golden traffic volumes, showing what their current volumes are, what they're proposed to be in 2015, and then at 2035. And in each of these two, you see that the Parkway will increase in these numbers slightly the amount of traffic that's going through Golden. And there's conflicting traffic numbers out there. There's the Denver Regional Council of Governments numbers, traffic numbers. There's the City of Golden's traffic numbers, and then there's the authority's traffic numbers, and all of them differ for most part. So, and depending on the authority's traffic numbers, if they're talking about revenue generation, they're bigger. If they're talking about air quality, they're usually smaller. So, depending on what outcome you want to have. And then McCaslin traffic volumes, you'll see what we have currently to date, which is a reasonable number, manageable. The City of Golden and what they predicted traffic volumes would be in 2035. I think these are 2035 numbers. Our capacity, what we think McCaslin can handle, what the Denver Regional Council of Government traffic numbers, what their model says, and then you can see what the Jefferson Parkway Authority's numbers are. And they want to show to whoever's going to build it that they have the traffic numbers to finance the construction. So the toll revenue that they get off the traffic numbers. So you can see the difference between Golden's model and the authority's number. So it's quite a difference.
And when you say what our capacity number is that our capacity and still maintaining a what, A, B, C, D,
I believe this is a C-level traffic number, and it's based on its current configuration of two-lane road. No expansion.
Matt, is there any
and the
word?
turnabout?
Huh?
And is the turnabout on it?
A roundabout? Yeah.
Is there any word on the traffic study that we initiated?
You sound like you're from Europe.
Any results back or?
Yeah, those, I thought I had given those before, but I'll double check on that. But they were similar to the City of Golden's numbers.
Okay, so we recently received one?
It was a couple meetings ago.
And we used the same consultant, did we not?
We did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
So the
shocking.
numbers are the same.
Not
Yeah.
shocking.
And then just questions the town has been discussing internally. Do we fight to stop the Jefferson Parkway toll road? Do we try to reach some sort of a deal with the authority, similar to what the city of Boulder and Boulder County did? And what that deal might look like. So we've had some discussions on those possible alternatives. And then there's some websites that the public can go to get some additional information. The City of Golden has a huge amount of information on the toll road and what its impacts would be, and traffic numbers and different scenarios. And then the city of Arvada also has information, as well as the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority has information for additional resources. Some other things, I'll go back real quick, that I wanted to mention. Other things that might have an impact on the toll road to consider is, if you have this toll road built, what happens to Highway 93? Does it just get neglected with no improvements? Or does it get the improvements that I think everybody thinks needs to happen on Highway 93? And the same thing with Indiana. Right now it's a 2-lane road. Does it just stay that way with no improvements to it? Because both of these roads, a good portion of them go through Jefferson County, and they probably will have little motivation to make improvements to 93 or Indiana if they have the toll road in. So that's something else that we have to keep in mind as we discuss this proposed toll road moving forward. Any questions from the board or questions?
Are those roundabouts meant the blue dots?
No, they are areas that we've identified that may need improvements if the toll road goes in. This is the intersection of Indiana 128, McCaslin and 128, which I think everybody thinks needs improvements. And then Colton and McCaslin, there's a roundabout there currently, but do we need an underpass if we're going to, increase the traffic to what we're looking at? So those are just,
Pedestrians, is that what you mean?
right.
Yeah. What about McCaslin and 36 interchange?
Right. Currently, the interchange is, I think everybody thinks in rush hour is deficient, and with increased traffic, we definitely need to see some improvements.
On the order of 50% to doubling. And can you point out where Rocky Flats and where the road is and which way the prevailing winds go?
Let's see. So here's Rocky Flats and the toll road, and I believe the prevailing winds head this direction, south.
Except for last night.
Yeah.
They were
I mean,
going
yeah.
the other direction.
Yeah.
Matt, informally asking any questions? Or- I don't-
Yeah, we will be informal during the work session.
Just that, if you could, the section, I just happened to drive it the other day coming back the first time, the section that's completed that cuts the southeast corner of the rectangle, if you will.
This here?
Yeah.
Huh?
Is that land that it's cutting through, was that once part of Rocky Flats, the part that's north of 72, or is that
No.
south of any activity?
That's south.
South of Rocky Flats.
But most of that rectangle is, there was a small section of Rocky Flats that was initially bought, and Trustee Sterling, you can correct me, but then it was expanded because they needed more property, and there were, I think, concerns about the releases that happened there. But they didn't buy everything, and so that's why along 93, if you drive down to Golden that way, you'll see some commercial activity there. That's outside the Rocky Flats gate. And I think everything next to Indiana, it was part of Rocky Flats, with the exception of that southeast corner, which is branching.
Yeah.
All right, so and the question I was getting to then, thank you, is the concern about contamination from the construction dirt, is that appreciably more of an issue north-south along Indiana than it was when they just built that extension that's already built?
This here?
In other words,
That wasn't part of Rocky Flats.
right, but there also wasn't, I'm not going anywhere with this, I'm just asking the question, is it also, right along Indiana, there wasn't production either, was there?
Pardon?
No.
There's no production, so the industrial site, which is where the active area was, is basically right in the middle. That's, all of it's been taken down and scraped to the ground.
I don't think anything beyond 96 was part of the buffer zone.
The question is do we have some idea from the construction that has already occurred on that section through the north, southeast?
I'm not aware that they've studied any of that. I think they just built it. So, but the concern, just for historical perspective, is that even though the industrial area was in the middle of that site and didn't border on Indiana, that there were several fires and several releases over the course of time that had radioactive material basically drift to the east. And so that there was plutonium and a whole bunch of other toxic chemicals that were found outside the industrial area.
And just to flesh that out, Dr. Harvey Nichols' last meeting, right, is a scientist at CU who actually did counts on that periphery outside Rocky Flats, along where the right-of-way is going to be built. And you'd have to talk to him also about that southern area. But the point is that was all windborne, and actually it's airborne. And it was brought down with rain and snow, et cetera, and it had quite extensive counts that he feels are hugely problematic. He testified once again last week at the Boulder City Council meeting to the same effect. So,
Right, but if the wind tends to go down, you think
Right.
it would be just as bad on the southeast?
right. Yeah, that would have been a good case study, but in all probability, it was not measured.
And also for historical perspective, there was a cleanup and closure agreement that was reached where the areas that were outside the industrial area were there was a whole bunch of cleanup. I don't remember, $5 billion worth of cleanup in the industrial area, but they analyzed the areas in the buffer area, and they felt that was safe enough. But that's a safe enough. That's a hard one because what's safe enough. You drive in your car, you take a risk. So this is all a risk analysis here. So they felt that the surface, I believe, was safe to live on. But the question is, what happens when you start digging up property there? And I don't think that was ever analyzed, as far as I'm aware. Maybe not even anticipated.
Well, and some of the plutonium is still buried underneath. I mean, they did not, mitigate all of it.
No, they didn't.
And
No.
some of the sites where you dispose of plutonium, like WIP in New Mexico, couldn't take any more of the plutonium, so they had to bury it.
No, plutonium wasn't intentionally buried there.
It was, right. So there wasn't everything that was...
It was never stored, that's never
Correct.
been intended to be a storage area.
The
It
question
never
is,
was.
right, they
That's
couldn't
very
clean,
true.
they couldn't clean it up. They would talk about scraping the entire property down 20 feet and importing new soil and then trying to find a place to put that in. I think in the risk/benefit calculation, it was felt that the levels of remaining plutonium were safe enough if they were left undisturbed.
Well, but undisturbed is a floating sort of concept. You've got underground streams, you've got burrowing animals, and certain parts of the science indicate that plants actually, via their root structure, pull up plutonium because it is in tiny, tiny, tiny particles, and as that leaf matter and stem and all that dies and disintegrates, it then becomes airborne. So there's lots of arguments on either side of this issue.
The area we're talking about is called, the industrial areas where all the production went on. That's still controlled by Department of the Energy. The rest of it that has now become the wildlife refuge was called the buffer zone for primarily security reasons. But that became a wildlife refuge, I believe, primarily to make sure that it wouldn't be developed with this lesser cleanup.
Right.
And so the idea of the parkway going through there is kind of contrary to that whole notion.
But unfortunately, they wrote it into the
Yeah,
refuge
I
act.
understand that.
Yeah.
But, because there was, no question that when Rocky Flats was gone, there would be parties out there wanting to develop that commercially.
Well, and they anticipated that a road would come through. So they put in the Refuge Act, when they turned it into a wildlife refuge, to allow for this 300-foot buffer to be transferred over to whomever, whatever governmental entity that wanted to build a road there.
The most cogent piece of knowledge that was presented to me was that this entire parkway, Jefferson Parkway, is not being built because there's a transportation need for it. It's being built to enable development along its route. There's a huge amount of development right now on that east-west part, starting at Candelas all the way over to 93, that Jefferson County has slated, and there's a fair amount up by the Jefferson County Airport on the right corner there. So for me, that's a critical issue. If, in fact, we had so much transportation in this neck of the woods that we had to build other transportation corridors, and let's put that out there and figure out the best way to build transportation corridors. But I don't believe that's the case. There may be people on the board who disagree with me, but from my perspective, it is simply an effort by Jefferson County to develop Jefferson County lands and reap the financial benefit of that development. And given the health and safety, the potential health and safety impacts, we've got to take that very seriously, because one little nanoparticle of plutonium that's ingested into your lungs can cause cancers and other major, major serious consequences. It's not as if you have to be exposed to it for a long period of time. You breathe the slightest particle of that and it embeds in your lungs and it causes major, major health problems, or has that potential at least.
And so, just to play devil's advocate, there have been people that say, yes, transportation improvements need to happen in that quadrant. That's why there was a Northwest study that went on. People that drive down 93, I think, especially on rush hour, realize that that's an issue. People that think that, well, there was mostly a beltway that's going around Denver, like most metropolitan areas. Why don't we have one that goes around? So, I mean, I kind of get that. But at the end of the day, I think it is to promote development in Jefferson County, which more power to them. We're not the
trying.
We're not the
Absolutely.
planning agency, so that's their land. They get to do what they want to do there, and they wanted to build infrastructure when there wasn't any money, and so that's why the Parkway was, because they're going to lease that out to somebody else to build. But at the end of the day, potentially has health consequences in the construction in Rocky Flats, and two, causes significant infrastructure problems for us without anybody mitigating that. So that's an issue.
And I think, following on that, if the Beltway is a critical reason, then why necessarily place it in the middle of something or touching something that could be hazardous? And second, that people should be aware that the standard EIS process was aborted politically and not pursued, because it was declared by the governor not needed, not because environmental reasons said it wasn't needed.
Well, and the other thing is, Colorado Department of Transportation aborted their what they call a final EIS, which is a environmental impact statement, and they aborted it because, first of all, they couldn't find a transportation need, and they decided that the best for this area would be improving Indiana and 93 as they are today, improving that further with extra lanes or whatever, but bringing in a separate toll road or separate road was not going to be, it would not have the traffic that is needed like the rest of, or at least C470 and E470 have. I would not compare it to the Northwest Parkway because that really doesn't have much traffic on it.
Neither does E470.
Is it really?
E470 is great to the airport because no one's ever on it. It's terrific. There's
You mean going
E470 to the airport.
going down and around? Or
Couldn't
Northwest
tell you
Parkway?
where it is. All I know is I get on it, it says airport that way.
Oh, that's Northwest Parkway, yeah.
That
That
next
is-
to E47.
To E47, yeah.
It's only, in Northwood Park,
It's,
it's 8
it's,
miles.
chunk.
right, it's only 8 miles. Yeah, that road obviously does not have much, many cars on it at all, and I don't think that their revenue is doing so well on that. And I would probably equate that with the Jefferson Parkway. That's basically probably what we're going to be seeing, which doesn't, once you build it, you can't take it back.
So the questions, I mean, this evening during the town board meeting, we have a resolution that says that we're opposed to the parkway basically for the things that we talked about this evening. And the question is that where the board wants to be, and do other board members think otherwise or thoughts about it? I mean, is it the plan to stop the parkway, which is a logically valid thing to try to do for those reasons, or is it to find mitigation that would make sense for the town of Superior? So I don't know if people have thoughts about that.
I
There's
think
stop, there's move, and then there's other mitigation, I'd say.
Right, I'd put the moving into the mitigation category. So
And, I think it's kind of a multi-tiered plan where you try to stop the parkway in order to find a way to reach a deal to mitigate some of the traffic impacts, or to be able to have it partially moved, rerouted, and that would be more ideal for our town. I mean, we didn't ask to have this toll road in our backyard.
Maybe we could have Christo hang their curtains so that the stuff never comes to us. What do you think?
if they're orange or whatever they
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
I'm very purist, actually, about the health and safety impacts. I don't see any choice but to make sure that the health and safety issues have been properly addressed to the extent we can force them to be addressed. We may have some control or impact on that, and we may not have some impact, but I would like to see us go through the process to force the Parkway or the Fish and Wildlife Service, whoever has that responsibility, to prove that they can safely excavate and build a road. To me, that's the first line, is health and welfare issues. And I'd like to go down that road, and if we are not,
Just not the parkway.
yeah, I'd like to go down that small r, O-A-D, and see if we can have an impact on that issue. And if we can't, if we're turned away, then we have to consider other alternatives.
Other board thoughts about that? I mean, I think it's incumbent. I mean, I'm surprised that Jefferson County, Nevada, and Westminster don't necessarily care about this, since that's, with the winds that were described, it's moving right into their drinking water reservoir. So why you wouldn't be concerned, I'm not sure. But I do think it's incumbent upon us as a first step to say, yeah, it is we realize that the wildlife refuge is probably safe to walk on. We're not convinced that that's true for any construction, and I think that it's, we are looking out for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents who drive down that way, and I don't know why we wouldn't say that we need to have that further analyzed.
Right, and I might add that some of the entities who are in the Jefferson Parkway project, and Chris, you have more information than I do on this, are opposed to breaching the dams, which would allow the water that is currently on Rocky Flats to go into their drinking supply. So on the one hand, they say we
Because they're concerned
don't...
it's contaminated.
They think it may be contaminated, the water, and they don't want it in their drinking supply, but oh, by the way, they're not concerned about the dust. And so it seems a little bit hypocritical to me. Either it's safe or it's not. Which is it?
Well, they're walking a fine line between water and air.
Right.
That's how they're carving it out.
Well, I'm talking dust in the air, contaminated dust in the air, not just ambient air.
So, speaking along those lines, the question would be, what would be the best? I mean, we'll send unfortunately, where we've got to is that the Parkway, we've tried to engage them, I think, in this process, trying to have them understand what our issues are, and have politely, maybe the polite way of saying this is they haven't really picked up on our concern and haven't really been interested in engaging with us in that. So the question is, what is the next best way to make sure that our concerns, this one concern, not addressing the traffic concerns, how do we address the potential public health concern, and what would be the best strategy? So, Mr. Magley, you will figure that out for us.
Yes. I mean, it's during any studies that are done, it's participating in those and making sure that that analysis is done by either Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment or federal agency would be in charge of that.
Right. So, I think we're concerned, just because of what was brought up by Mr. Payne earlier, that there was construction that happened in that southeast corner, I think, without any analysis. And I think we're concerned that that same process, people will just say, yeah, safe enough, don't need to do anything. And I don't think the town is comfortable with that position. So my thinking is probably chatting with the Department of Health and CDPHE might be a good strategy.
And I was just going to bring that up. I've gotten a phone call, a couple that I'm playing phone tag with Carl Spring, who's with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I'm sure it goes on and on and on, the rest of the title, but so if anyone wants to meet him, discuss some things with me, let me know. I haven't set up an actual appointment.
I think that meeting would be good, but I would like to see something official on the record where there was actually written documentation back and forth between the CDPHE and the town of Superior, understanding what they think the process should be. So while the conversations are good, and I highly encourage anybody who wants to do that, I think that for record's sake that we need to have a written documentation of that.
And does that mean it comes from town staff, or does it come from lawyer, or who?
I think
Combo?
I should be a letter with the mayor's signature on that.
I think starting there would be the best. And if they say no, then we ratchet it up a little bit.
And I didn't solicit him. He keeps calling me.
Oh, perfect.
And he's been been talking to other folks and wanted to meet with me. So I think we should make it more official from the town of Superior, like you said, and bring more to the table. So maybe I should refer once I talk to him, refer over to Matt
Yeah, good. Yeah.
and get something going with him.
A couple of us have met with Mr. Spring in the past, and so that conversation has been had on an informal basis, just a fact gathering. That was part of the education.
And who met? You and
Chris and I
Chris.
met. We are new to this issue, having just being the new members on the board, and I can relay my summary of that, but I'd rather. My summary is that Mr. Spring felt that there is no issue and
do you
no
know
concern.
what is his title there?
I thought he was the director. I can't
No, I
can't
don't know
be
about
sure.
that, but
executive director, I think.
at the CDPHE, along with EPA, when they approved the Rocky Flats cleanup agreement and closure, basically are on record that that property's good for any use when it got delisted. So that's the uphill battle you're fighting there.
That continues to be their position.
Yeah. When they made a decision, property was delisted, it wouldn't have been delisted unless it was approved for any use. And so what they'll tell you from this point on is any environmental studies that are done would be the normal ones you do for any transportation project. And nothing special there. And that's probably why Jefferson Parkway is of the opinion all they have to do is check the connections, because that's what calls out the studies to see what impacts you have on the connections.
So Carl Spring is a project manager for Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and he oversees the environmental restoration of Rocky Flats, the DOE area, which is
Yeah.
the
He's at the-
hot zone.
Rocky Flats Stewardship
Yeah,
Council
he's
meetings.
over-
Yeah, he is, and I've met him
Yeah.
a couple times.
But, they are on record already as having taken position on the closure, so, and that means something to them, so.
Means some to us too.
Well, and I think they state that it was cleaned up for the use that it is currently at, which is a wildlife refuge. That's what their position is. And I don't think they're stating anything above that, because that's what it is right now.
I'm not sure about that. I think the delisting was not just for one particular use.
So that's issue number one, and issue number two then is the traffic. I think it's highly likely that what Trustee Sorelli just said is going to be the outcome, is that, yeah, we'll do through this assessment and we'll say, yeah, it's safe. Okay, so then we're done with that one, but we still are left with the traffic concern, and I think that that's a big issue for many residents in the town. Not only the people that live on the back of McCaslin that will have to deal with that traffic, but people who want to get across McCaslin, and people that in the town who then will bear the brunt of the increased maintenance associated with increased traffic with no compensation for the traffic that's being generated. So that's issue number two. I think that we've sent the authority what our concerns are. I think they've been expressed clearly to them. And so far, the answer has been, that's interesting, and no. So that's not really a comfortable position to be in. So whatever we need to do to make sure that they hear what our concerns are is where we're going to need to go.
So, I mean, bottom line is it's a two-pronged approach, like everybody said. Ideally, we'd like to stop the thing. I mean, personally, I would include the Northwest Parkway in this summarization. All of this northwestern portion of the Beltway has circumvented normal processes by going the public-private partnership route when it wasn't supported by the normal processes. Never would have happened.
Right.
This is just a continuation of that. And that bothers me a great deal.
I agree.
And I don't think the city of Boulder saying, oh, new partners, it would be great if you listen to Superior's concerns is really going to make much difference. A couple of the council members suggested that the Parkway, who was sitting there at the Boulder City Council meeting, said, oh, you heard from Superior, you should really enter into some negotiations with them. I don't think they felt all that chagrined or
No.
impelled or compelled.
So, in terms of that, so it sounds like that what makes sense is what we're going to do this evening is that we're going to be formally opposing the Parkway because of these, specifically for these two issues, and that our concerns should be addressed, and the town will do what it's ever in our capacity to have our voice being heard and have our issues being addressed. So, I think that's the first step for that.
For the students in the audience, you came here on a night when we're discussing one of the most complex issues that we've discussed in a long time. I would suggest if you want background information, you just go to Google and Google Jefferson Parkway, and you'll see some newspaper coverage in the Boulder Daily Camera that will help explain all this. So perhaps you can try to understand it.
Okay, so staff, you feel like you have direction?
Yes.
Okay. So we're done with that topic. Let's go through the next agenda items real quickly, and then take a quick few minutes break before the meeting.
Let's see. So we have upcoming on May 23rd meeting, our financial audit will be presented to us. No issues with that. I'm happy to report.
Good.
I think we're going to have the resolution that's being proposed for the Waterford subdivision agreement, the streets issue. I heard back from Rita Dozell, who's the HOA president for Waterford, and they were okay with the agreement as staff proposed it, and she was going to get her board to consider it for approval and get it back to us. So I think we'll have that discussion on the 23rd.
Be nice to put that behind us.
And I don't remember what it does or doesn't say about the ability to renegotiate so that they can take it back as a private road or something like that. Is there something that says, once we've built it, it stays public forever, or what does it say?
They would need to petition the town again. They wanted to take it over as a private road.
But then we've got all that history and the whole issue of what's sort of the understanding at the time something's made, and then if it's not actually written down, then, it gets forgotten and blah, 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 blah.
I
So
assume it'd be pretty concrete in I assume we'll sign a IGA with them. I'm not sure what you sign with an HOA.
yeah, the agreement to take the roads over.
Yeah.
Isn't it a resolution?
Well, the board will
Needs to be a
adopt
some sort of contract.
Yes.
Just
And
good for how long?
I'm not sure if it's an IGA or not, but it's
They're
an
not a
agreement
government.
between,
I know, that's
Yeah.
why I'm not sure.
to where we take the streets over as public, and there's
I do agree with Lisa, though, that this is a sort of a murky, muddle thing. And if in the wording of the resolution, we can clarify why this course of action has been taken and that it's intended
in some of the
to
warehouse
resolve
laws. Yeah.
for the long term.
But once the agreement's signed and we've taken them, they're public.
The roads will be
But they
deeded
were
back
public
to
once
us.
Yeah, the
before.
roads are deeded
But
back to us.
they'll be deeded back to us. They can't undeed it.
It was with the people that deeded it back was the Metropolitan District
Right.
before
District
the town
number
was
two.
in control of them.
The only participation the town had back in 2001 was with regard to the gate and allowing them to put the gate back up.
I think you get the sense of
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see, and then we will have a matter before the board on the piece of property in Resolute's property, the town piece, that was included in the Superior McCaslin Interchange District at the time because that was the director's parcel. Well, it's no longer needed to be in SMID because it's no longer the director's parcel, so we are going to exclude that from SMID. I mean, a piece of property that far away from the interchange wouldn't typically be included in SMID, so it's no longer needed, so that's what's going before the board then. And then we met with the Boulder Valley Ice representatives last week, and they want to have a work session with the board on the 23rd, just to show you where they're at. I handed you out some material to look at. They have a video on YouTube. If you go to Superior Boulder Valley Ice, I think it's called, presentation, you can look at their video on YouTube. But they just have a dialogue with the board as far as what their future plans are. So that'll be on the work session for the 23rd.
Very good. Anything, highlights on the digest?
Let me pull it up here.
Once was enough.
I haven't passed, but yeah.
Once was enough.
Yeah, the Colfax Marathon. I don't know if everybody feels like running.
We got 2 weeks now.
I got the call and I was thinking, wow,
Sure.
but I wanted the census data, we gave you some of what they've released to us so far. They'll release more stuff as the year goes on. We'll get that to you as soon as they do. Whole Foods is doing a remodel to the interior of their store. So that's good news.
Very.
And mainly around the food court section, it sounds like. Target should be done with their remodel work by the end of July. Flatirons Dental has pulled their interior remodel permit for the old Blockbuster site, so that was good. The street and concrete work is started in the Circle Park neighborhood, so you might get calls and direct them to me or Kurt. And then I gave you some information on the Superior Morgul bike race. We've secured some ads to run on Channel 9 News, so we're excited about that, to get that information out.
And I have some trivia for you on the Morgul.
All right.
See if anybody knows the answer to this. Where do you think the word Morgul came from?
Either the cat or the
Cat
dog.
or a dog.
The name of a cat.
Morgul and Bismarck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Bismarck was the dog and Morgul was the cat.
That's really scary that a lot of people know that answer. All right. With that, we're going to take a couple-minute break before the meeting starts. Great. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for May 9th, 2011. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elia Gregoris, Trustees Joe Cervelli,
Here.
Chris Hansen,
Here.
Sandy Pennington,
Here.
Lisa Skumatz,
Here.
Deborah Williams,
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Hardin here.
So I have a question before we move on to the approval of the agenda for the attorney. If I just have questions about something on the consent agenda, which I don't think is going to change, I can just ask that during the
Sure.
consent agenda.
And then if it does look like after your questions it's going to change, then
We just, okay. All right. So that brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Well, I was originally going to pull 7D, but if I can just ask questions and not change anything,
but
You
for
think-
information purposes,
Yeah.
is that what you were going to do? The
Yeah.
same thing on 7D? Oh.
Well, I had the same thing on
Well,
7C.
So why don't we just go ahead and, yeah.
Let's do that.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those changes, including 7C and 7D, to follow the consent agenda. Motion by trustee Skumat, second by trustee Williams. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Anybody would like to start this evening?
Sure. I have nothing to report.
Very nice. Trustee Williams.
I have nothing to report either,
Wow.
for the first time.
Trustee Pennington.
Me?
Yeah.
I do.
All right.
Last week attended El Dorado K-8 Traffic and Safety Meeting. We've discussed it at several board meetings. At this point, we are not making any infrastructural changes, no hard changes to anything. We instead are putting into place, we meaning Robin, the principal, a program to increase cooperation among the parents by involving their students. So it's going to be sort of a peer pressure sort of thing, and this will include educational session and on back-to-school night about how it is to operate, and then positive rewards that the student reaps the benefit from if their parents follow the rules. So if by January this has not ameliorated the problem, one other fact is Kurt will also have, our Public Works Director will also have the Boulder Sheriff on site at different times to reinforce positive behaviors. And if this doesn't work by January 1st, and it looks like we need to really consider hard changes going into the following school year, we'll readdress it at that point. We all attended the EDRC meeting, I think, in which the Economic Development Committee meeting, in which Dr. Cogg's Metrovisioning Group presented a interactive program in which we were able to see how the region is assessing issues like transportation and aging and development, and then we got to press little clickers like you do in college and register our opinion and see how that might affect our own community. And I thought it was quite a valuable exercise. I really enjoyed that. We also all attended the dinner with the Homeowners Association last Monday night, I believe, and that's always good for the dialogue, and that's already a positive relationship, but I think that'll continue there. And then last Tuesday, along with Trustee Skumatz, I attended the Boulder City Council meeting in an attempt to get them to not drop their opposition to the Jefferson Parkway. We were unsuccessful in that, but we certainly were successful in getting our viewpoint known both to Boulder City, and in attendance were the Boulder County Commissioners, who a couple of weeks ago did the same thing. And I think they both understand where this community is coming from, although they did not change their course of action. That's all.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz.
I testified on Boulder Parkway, or on Jefferson Parkway with Boulder, and although we were unsuccessful, I thought it was useful to make our opinion known, and whether it will help or not, it got several Boulder council members to suggest to the Jefferson Parkway that they take some of our concerns seriously and begin to interact with us. Again, I don't know what, other than moral suasion, I don't know what power that actually has, but at least the the issues were, I guess, raised to the level that the Boulder City Commissioners seemed, the council members seemed interested in seeing some remediation happen. It was a meeting that was all very, very positive in the portrayal of the, I was surprised to hear new cooperation between Boulder and Jefferson County. I didn't know that had been poor in the past, but it was certainly portrayed as if this was new and very positive compared to the past. But overall, it was a disappointing outcome. But not unexpected. I guess that's the way to put it. I attended an RCAD meeting, which is Resource Conservation Advisory Board, and one of the main elements taking place in that meeting was a tour of the new hazardous waste facility that's located adjacent to the recycling facility, and it just feels a lot safer than basically operating out of a tent. So I feel a lot better about both the workers and about what's happening with what our citizens bring.
Along those lines, can I, maybe you could put a plug in for the household, for the hazardous waste facility, and if residents have things, what can they bring, and when can they bring, and where do they bring?
That's a really great, I don't remember the hours, but it is, it used to be just pretty infrequently open, now it's open more. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to get that information to post on the town website. It's, they can bring, let me think. I want to recommend some things that people not bring. So,
Sure, yeah.
It's expensive to deal with things in the proper way at a hazardous waste facility. And one thing that does not have to be treated in a special way, if you do a little pre-treatment work on your own, is paint. So if you're talking about latex paint, really the recommended way to deal with it is to open it up, let it dry, and toss it out. Do not bring it to the facility where they have to pay many, many dollars per gallon to have it treated. So that's probably one of their biggest concerns, that they spend a lot of money on something that truly doesn't have to be treated, especially if we would just let it dry out. But do bring things like pesticides, cans of whatnot, and cleaners and all that sort of stuff. That kind of stuff does matter. I was going to reiterate one of the other places you can bring it is our Hard to Recycle Day. Mm-hmm. And so on May 17th is our cleanup, and put things out starting at 7 a.m., or I guess at 7 a.m. I should say, or by 7 a.m. The Hard to Recycle Day is on the 21st at the North Pool, and that's hazardous materials as well as electronics. And then our Morrill race is on Memorial Day weekend. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was I did partake of something that I heard about, not as early as I wish I had, about Garden in a Box that the Conservation Resource Center is doing. And it said to order them in April for May delivery, but I ordered them in May for May pickup. And you might try going on to looking on the website for Garden in a Box, and they have you can purchase plants enough to cover a 5 by 20 foot area for a pretty discounted price, and they're all local, well-growing plants that are xeriscape tolerant. So if you can, it was a pretty good selection of plants for $125, I think, and it covers 5 by 20, which is a pretty big spot. I think that's it.
And we'll see you planting in your backyard.
No,
Did you order it?
and it's going in, yes.
All right. Trustee Hansen.
I don't have anything to report, but I would ask the board to consider giving Matt an affirmative head nod on bringing in a consulting firm such as Downtown Colorado to help the EDRC go to the next level and identifying areas of focus within the town and businesses, helping us establish a vision plan and also an action plan.
Bids, dollars?
What's that?
Bids,
How much?
dollars?
It was $1,500. Did you get the email that I sent?
I probably did.
So I sent out the proposals last week for Downtown Colorado and America Downtown. In Downtown Colorado, to come in and do that kind of work would cost us about $1,500.
So my only question, I mean, I think it's very helpful to be proactive in anything that town anticipates doing. So we've done a big visioning process for the remaining parcels in town at the town center. What is it anticipated? Do you think that they would be reviewing the town's vision and making a critique of that? Or I wasn't quite sure exactly what they
That would
would
be
end
part
up
of
being
it,
doing.
but it would also be interviewing some of the key stakeholders, such as the Chamber of Commerce, board members, and seeing what's worked in the past, what we've implemented, what hasn't worked, and what our current needs would be. And I would assume that some of that would revolve around the marketplace and getting those businesses, in there,
Mhm.
but also helping us develop a retention plan, and then also an attraction strategy for new businesses.
So I could give you an example that
Yeah.
might make more sense. Say you wanted the Superior Marketplace to be more pedestrian friendly, and you wanted more businesses to come in and have a more inviting feel. Then you would bring downtown Colorado, and they would analyze everything in the area and figure out how they could redesign it so that it would work for you.
Right.
Does that make better sense?
Yeah, and I thought that's what they did. So that was my only concern, because I think that we really have one parcel, I mean, with multiple landowners, but one parcel left for development, which is the town center, and everything else. I mean, the big chunk of Superior is residential housing. So then the commercial properties would be the Safeway area and the town and the marketplace. So I can't envision redesigning the marketplace, but maybe that's what we're
And
So they
about.
look at what is already developed and what they can make it, how they can make it better.
Mhm.
And they also look at what hasn't been developed and how you can incorporate that into your town.
given what authorities we have. And there hasn't been board appetite in the past, maybe there is now, but we drew little pedestrian walkways in the whole Centro parking lot and all kinds of things like that, and there was no board interest in trying to turn Centro into something more pedestrian friendly. So,
That's just one component of
I'm just saying, yeah.
The bigger picture is that we continue to lose businesses, and we don't have a plan in place to keep businesses here or attract new ones. And that's part of the process that they would bring to the table.
And this is part of trying to help the committee develop their recommendation that they would present as advisory to the board. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, they're not officially an advisory committee of the board, but yes.
I think for $1,500, you will more than get your money's worth in revamping a part of our town that would be better than it is today.
So I guess that's the bigger question. Is it the board's desire to revamp something in town?
That we do it.
So you might need to spend the $1,500 to find that question out, or you might not. I don't know. But is it something worthwhile or not?
That's kind of where I was looking at, is get some idea of whether it's a direction we should seriously be thinking of going to or not. Get an idea of what's entailed in it and whether it makes sense.
Well,
I'm
you know,
not sure that revamping, I'm not sure these discussions aren't premature, but finding out.
And I made
is-
an example. That was just totally an
Right.
example.
Yeah, but finding out whether it makes sense and what we can do.
What the
I'm
town can do as
yeah,
opposed to the landowner.
right.
Yeah.
What we can do. I'm concerned about, personally concerned about sections in the marketplace that seem to be emptying out, and, are there ideas to help that, that kind of
And the
thing.
focus here can be as narrow or as broad as we choose to make it. But I'm very encouraged by the progress EDRC has made after just 3 meetings. And I thought the Metro Visioning last week set the tone, helped educate us on how the entire metro region views these challenges. And I do think it's appropriate now to start focusing here and take what we've learned and try to come up with a plan. And I see this information gathered here as just helping us identify the problems and helping us propose solutions.
So, once again, $1,500 is not going to be a big dollar figure, so, it's probably not worth arguing about too much, but I just want to make sure that we are able to frame the question and the concerns that we have that we want them to address, and I'm not sure I have heard necessarily what those, if we're really concerned about the marketplace, then, yeah, we should definitely address that, but we should probably address that with the new property owner, because we don't have authority to do anything there without them, so.
So, two things. If the board wants to do this, we have room in the economic development budget line item.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, I haven't talked to Trustee Hanson, but we could have them come to a work session if the board wanted. Just to hear the board's thoughts before they move forward, working with the EDRC, or we can just have to start working with the EDRC.
Matt, what are your thoughts on bringing in from downtown Colorado?
I think it'd be interesting to see what they had to say and what areas we would have them look at and what they would come up with. I've never worked with a group like that before, so I'm not sure. But I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of ideas they have.
I guess from my perspective, and once again, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I'd be interested to see what they were planning on actually doing. I saw the proposal, but
And that's why I thought maybe a work session in front of the board. Just, 15 minutes. Or
So have her come up and do a presentation
Yeah.
to the board on what exactly she.
we could maybe even do the 23rd,
Mhm.
if that worked for them, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been to one of their presentations, and to me, it's incredible what they can do with something that looks so plain and full of concrete, and how they change it into something that is very pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly, and
right. I've seen their projects in the past but the projects that I've seen them work on are maybe run down downtowns in communities that want to revitalize, and this is what they would recommend doing to
I'm sort of
revitalize the
seeing
community.
some, I'm seeing that.
But I wouldn't focus
Yeah.
just there, though. I would look at the bigger picture on what we can do, and that's marketing our town, marketing our businesses, creating some kind of incentive package that you apply to much more than just a couple of businesses here. And they've also got the resources that they can bring to the table. It's important to help us identify those things. So it's much bigger than making additional pedestrian walkways and all that kind of stuff. It's more about what we can do as a town.
And I don't have a problem with us spending money since there's budget. And I guess I don't feel like I have to have them come here. $1,500 is such a good deal that maybe the second appearance at a board meeting would actually stress that tiny little budget.
I was assuming they'd come here for free.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that they
Yeah.
must be eating something probably in order to do it for $1,500, and
Yeah.
they might have to eat a lot more too.
I too don't need to
Come
see
again.
a presentation at a work session to approve this.
So I think I understand where the board is coming from, but once again, I think you usually get the best bang for your buck if you really have identified what you want somebody to tackle. And I'm feeling like I don't fully understand.
That's
what
the
they're
reason
gonna
to bring them
tackle.
in, though, is because there's so many different things that we could do, that where do we focus first? And by bringing them in, they will help us narrow that down.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, work session or no?
It
Sounds
might
like
be
they're.
interesting.
I'd be interested in it, but I haven't heard a lot of appetite for it. So.
I would obviously be interested in it.
If they're willing, that would be great. If they're willing to come,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Spend 15 minutes. Yeah. Either as a work session, or they could probably do that during a meeting or whatever. During a
Where do they
presentation.
come from, Chris? Is this a huge imposition to ask them to?
I don't think so. She works all over the state, or her team
Okay.
works all over the state.
Yeah, and if we hear that, yeah, I'm based out of Pueblo and I don't want to drive in for 15 minutes, then
Right. Okay.
I think we would understand that. Okay. So that's within your budgetary discretion, so I don't think that we need any votes on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Magley? No. Yes.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're in the reports, questions, and issues. Anything?
I apologize for being late. We had a rescheduled soccer game that I was coaching, so had to be there for the kids.
Did you win?
1-1.
Okay.
But it was
So it was worth
Oh,
it.
they keep score?
yes.
There's
But
always
the win
ties-
was actually made a strange
Always
game.
ties in soccer.
Just attended EDRC with pretty much everybody on the board, I think, a week ago Wednesday. Great meeting.
Great. Town manager?
We have, the family's contacted us about a possible donation, $2,000 donation for the purchase of bleachers for the synthetic turf field down at Community Park. It's a good opportunity to take advantage of that and get a couple of, and I forget the family's name, Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't have it.
But, so, they want to donate $2,000 to the town to help purchase some bleachers for Community Park. The town would need to come up with about anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 in addition to that to get a couple sets of bleachers for down there. So it's a good opportunity, I think, for the town to take advantage of a donation, but.
Could we put in the newsletter soliciting additional ones, see whether or not there are any other people who might want to do the same?
Well, I think this donation is for, in memory of the grandparents who have passed away that used to come and watch the grandkids at the Mustang football, so they're donating, so they would like to have like a little plaque, for the stand in memory of.
Are these permanent bleachers, or are they?
No,
Well,
they're,
you'd be able to move them.
Because I thought
We
the
wouldn't-
whole thing was it wasn't, we weren't doing permanent structures sort of there and stuff like that. you know?
This is the turf field.
I understand.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
We had an issue over whether or not there was
Oh,
going to be a
really?
scoreboard.
No, these are small enough to where you can move them around if you need to, if you want to use them in other places. We wouldn't do that very often, but if we needed to, we could.
Where would they be stored?
they'd be facing west.
Yeah,
So-
they'd be on the east side of the field facing west.
So they wouldn't be stored, they would stay there.
Oh, yeah, no, they're, yeah.
So this is what I'm going to recommend, is that I think that's a great idea. I love doing things in memory of people. The field would benefit from having bleachers, but let's go through the process where ProStack could actually look at it and that the town board could look at it before we sign off on something that we haven't seen. I think it would make the most sense, but I don't think anybody's going to be opposed to having somebody donate money for a bleacher.
If I haven't heard of this before tonight, but I did, it's relevant. We've discussed just very briefly in the Historical Commission about starting a program in which people could do a very similar thing. When a person dies, do something in memory or a bequest, that kind of thing. Of course, it was discussed in the context of, something historical, the flagpole or the bell, the fire bell, moving the fire bell, making it on a permanent stand, that kind of thing. So maybe we can even think about this just a little more broadly. And what I saw as a model for that is something that Louisville Historical Commission does, in which they standard in their newsletter have a list of bequests and in memoriams that benefit the town.
I guess my only concern is that if this becomes like a really lengthy, this is actually a very simple, it's within the manager's discretion to spend that kind of money. If we're talking about a couple $1,000s.
That's true, but it's not in his discretion to build or put something on public property, so.
Right. I guess I don't want to make it bigger than it really is. It's great to have somebody donate money. We have needed bleachers. The Mustangs have been, needing bleachers, and so has the
Soccer and lacrosse and everybody
the
down there.
lacrosse as well. So if this can be expedited, it's not going to take a long time. I like the music in the background. I don't know how quickly ProSec can take a look at this and give us a quick report. If we can get it in for this season, I guess that's the main.
Yeah, I think it'd be ready before Mustang football. I can't imagine it'd take that long. Yeah.
Sure.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. chair the ProStack, your advisory committee for Parks and Rec. This has actually been on one of our list of amenities, and it was there under Williams Field improvements. Goes all the way back to the when the issue of the scoreboard came up, which also had a donation to further that. So we've done work on it, and it would be very easy to address this very quickly.
Yeah, and I think Mustangs actually talked about this last year.
Right.
So,
They did.
They wanted the scoreboard first,
Right.
but we knew we'd come back to this, so it could be addressed very quickly.
Sounds good, and then we just would identify what line item that money would come out of. Okay, very good. Anything else from the town manager, town attorney,
No, thank you.
town clerk? Very good. That brings us to item number 5, public comment and consent agenda and non-agenda items. George, you have to at least come up and say hi to us.
You're all looking at me from there.
The only person in the front row.
Wow. No,
All right.
comments, all right.
Well, that brings us to item number 6, presentations, which we don't have any this evening. So that brings us to the consent agenda. And remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the April 25th, 2011 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meeting, and that's it. So I'll entertain a motion by Trustee Skumat, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number C, what was 7C, adoption of a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Colton Metropolitan District. Mr. Magley.
I had a couple of questions.
Well, just since it was, either way, however you want to do it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Just tell what this is about and then questions.
Before the board is consideration of an intergovernmental agreement between the town of Superior and the Colton Metropolitan District. This was a district that was created for the Resolute Investments proposed development at the corner of Colton Road and Flatiron Circle, West Flatiron Circle, I think it is. This development that's being proposed there is a commercial development with 2 office buildings, a hotel, and retail pads to be located on the property. The district was created to help finance the public infrastructure improvements that will be built on the property for the development, as well as for the ongoing maintenance of the development. The developer can issue up to $5 million in bonds for these financing of these improvements, as well as having a 25-year payback period for the bonds. The IGA is needed. It was part of the service plan that the board approved to create the district. The IGA is needed to lay out the processes for operation of the district, as well as financing of the infrastructure improvements. It lays out in the IGA that some of the highlights of it are any inclusion or exclusion of property in the district must receive written consent from the town. Improvements on the property will be financed by the district. As I mentioned, $5 million in bonds can be issued up to a 25-year repayment period. The service plan must adhere to all regulations or requirements that are found in Chapter 3 of the Superior Municipal Code. Any and all public improvements are dedicated to the town as determined necessary by the town. Requires that any fees under District 1 be paid by the district. It requires that the district submit annually documents to the town as far as financial statements, budget, construction plans, ballot questions, other IGAs. It also requires that, or allows the town to file a petition for the dissolution of the district if it's determined that the district has met its obligations that it was created for. And it requires that any modifications to the service plan be approved by the town. Those are the highlights of the IGA.
Very good. Trustee Sorelli.
Well, it's same question in 3 different places. In reading through the IGA, there's reference in the IGA to, in paragraph 2D and 9 and 10, there's reference to things being set forth in the service plan. So it's being referred to as a service plan, and I was wondering if that's not incorrect, that this is an agreement and the service plan was a different document, or am I misunderstanding that?
The service plan is a separate document, you're correct. And so when they refer to the service plan, they're referring back to the service plan, which is a separate document.
So, and so in 2D, they're saying
This service plan.
this service plan.
You're right.
And I don't know, the other one, 9 and 10, I'm not sure. Well, they do refer to the service plan or a service, so those might be okay.
Right, it's just that one, this.
So that's a minor correction that
Okay.
probably didn't need to be pulled for, but that was, we were in the pulling mode.
We can fix that.
I had a question. So and I don't have the number on me, but there's reference that there is, and I asked this last time, and I don't think I still understand the answer to this, but there's a requirement that there's no early prepayment of principal of the bonds, and I'm not sure why that's in there. I don't know if town attorney, town manager, or the finance director would know.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Paul Mills, our finance director here. You got an answer for that one? No?
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Paul Mills, town staff. Quick answers, I don't off the top of my head. I know there was discussion with the developer, and there was a specific reason why that was in, but I don't have that answer for you this evening, Mayor.
Okay.
I don't either, I apologize.
That's fine. I mean, it seems like it might be good to repay principal early, but, it's not it's going to be on somebody else's dime, so if they want to do it that way, I guess that would make sense. I have no idea why that's written into this agreement. And then there's reference that the district can do things inside its boundaries, or it can also go outside its boundaries as well. And it wasn't clear to me if they were to do, whatever it is that they were going to do outside their boundaries, would that have to be approved by the town before that
That
happened?
would be approved as part of the final plat site plan. So if they need to do,
Say they want to do more snow removal to allow, better access into their property, or they're going to do that someplace else.
They would have to have a contract to do that.
Contract.
So
you're talking about construction operation.
Well, I'm not sure. It was very amorphous about what
So-
it would be.
As far as construction, they'll have improvements off-site in the right-of-way and those type of things. Connections to Tyler, which are, that's private property, so they'll have some of that.
I just want to make sure they're not going to go. I mean, I know they would not do this because it costs money, but I don't want them going out willy-nilly doing things outside their service area to do stuff without somebody actually approving that, and that someone being a representative of the town.
They certainly couldn't do anything on our property. They do have the legal authority to act and provide service outside of their boundaries by agreement with whatever parties they're agreeing with. So they could provide those services.
Okay.
But they would need to have that agreement in place.
What services are you concerned of you?
Well, I don't know because it's not listed what that would be. It's very amorphous.
It references power and authority is described in the Special District Act.
Right.
Other applicable statutes. So I'm sure you have those memorized.
Well, it does allow them to provide, for example, our water district provides water service outside of its actual boundaries. So, special districts are allowed to provide services outside of their jurisdictional boundaries. So that's what this is referring to under the Special District Act. You can have a special district with one tiny parcel that provides services to a whole number of properties outside of that jurisdiction. So.
Okay. I guess, without knowing exactly what it was going to, I hate things written into contracts, agreements, without really being clear exactly what they're talking about.
They have that power anyway under the
So you
Special
can't do
District
anything about
Act,
this.
so it doesn't
Right.
matter that it's said in here because they would have that power anyway.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse. But
Not particularly, but
Sorry.
thank you. All right, fair enough.
So what is the process of the dissolution of the district?
Yeah.
Is that a board vote? Is it a ballot vote to the residents? What is that
No,
process?
to residents.
No, there's a legal proceeding that would have to be filed to dissolve the district. All of the outstanding debt would need to be paid, or a procedure would have to be, the court would order how the debt was to be paid before the district dissolved.
It's well, not similar, but I mean, we went through that with the dissolution of 2 and 3.
But that
But
was a
that was
vote.
bigger because
That was a
the
ballot
residents had a
vote.
vote on it. But we did have outstanding debt that had to be considered, so.
Okay.
So this would not be on the ballot for a vote?
Not to the general.
Not to the entire town.
district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be an election, I assume, of the district.
Of the district's own electors.
Okay.
And again, it would be a court proceeding, the court would order an election, then the court would enter an order pursuant to the election, dissolving the district and providing for payment of any outstanding obligations. So the
And-
properties within the district have to remain liable for whatever the outstanding debt is.
And when you say election, you're not saying election,
No.
a broad election.
No, the
You're
five
talking
people.
about the election of
the five people
board
that are the electors in
Right.
the
on
district.
the district. Okay.
Exactly.
And we've seen this before, right? We saw the draft. Has there
Right.
been any
Yes.
substantial change from the draft?
No, this is actually the draft.
It is the draft.
It is
Okay.
the draft, which is why the print is a little funny. All they did was fill in the notice provision, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, but before I do, I just did notice that paragraph 9 also refers to this service plan as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I move to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-23, Series 2011, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Town of Superior and the Colton Metropolitan District.
Motion by Trustee Sorelli. Is there a second by Trustee Williams? Further discussion? And I assume that would mean with substantially in the form here with the corrections that have been identified by Trustee Sorelli.
That's correct.
Okay. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number D, adoption of a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Colorado Department of Transportation for maintenance of traffic control devices. A quick synopsis, Mr. Magley, of what this is, and then Trustee Williams.
Let me just get there real quick. So this is an agreement that our Public Works and Utilities Director came across and realized that it had expired. We had one in place, and I think it expired in 2007. So he began discussing with the Colorado Department of Transportation staff to renew it, and it's a maintenance agreement for traffic signals that they reimburse to the town for our maintenance of those. He has also added striping on Marshall Road, as well as maintenance of signage in that area so that we can get in there and stripe the roads as we determine need, rather than waiting for CDOT staff to decide that it needs to be done. So there's an additional cost added to this agreement for those services. Originally, the contract or the agreement with CDOT was for $15,000 annually for the maintenance of the traffic signals. With the additional striping and the current costs and the maintenance of the signs in the area that we mentioned on Marshall Road, the annual cost that's going to be reimbursed to the town by CDOT is $29,152. And this will be an annual agreement that we have with them to maintain those sections of town and those signals and be reimbursed by CDOT. And we are, I believe our contractor that we have doing this work for us is either our staff or WL for the traffic signals, and then whoever we happen to contract out with striping during that year.
Trustee Williams.
So I had a number of questions. When it was in effect, this IGA from 2003 to 2007, did CDOT do the work or did the town do the work?
No, the town did the work.
So the town did the work and CDOT reimbursed
Right.
the town.
Yep.
And so then after 2007, what has been occurring? Does CDOT do the work?
No, the town still continued doing the work, and we continue to get reimbursed from the town. It's just the agreement wasn't renewed in 08, 09, and 10.
So the town's
Right,
still,
sorry.
the town is still doing the maintenance.
Right.
And getting reimbursed from CDOT.
Right.
So having the, this agreement, is it,
Just formalizes the process.
it
We're already
formalizes,
using-
okay, so it's, does it get your money quicker?
Well,
Does it get,
it formalizes the process, plus we've added the striping of Marshall and the maintenance of the signs on Marshall.
so after 2007, was there a cap on how much you could submit as to what you spent? There was no cap?
No, Kurt says no.
Okay, and so
There
based
was
on that.
affirmative head shaking in the audience,
Okay,
for the
no.
record.
Got it,
He's
no.
giving me baseball secrets.
There was no cap. So I'm curious to know what the cost had been each year after 2007?
Kurt, you want to come up and answer that for me?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Kirk Carr, Public Works Director. Costs were the same. It was $15,000 per year. We got reimbursed. And then we had our costs, similar costs to manage the signals. So everything stayed the same, status quo. Just wasn't formalized.
And did it ever go over 15,000, and did you have a difficulty with CDOT getting reimbursed?
No.
No.
No, we've never had any trouble with CDOT.
And so then I'm curious, what happens if it does go over the $29,152,000?
We'll work with CDOT. We're working under a state statute to set up this agreement. State statute says that CDOT can enter this agreement with a local agency to maintain the road. It has to be at CDOT's cost, so they'll reimburse us. So in the event that this contract is more expensive, then we'll work with them to get that additional reimbursement. One example of this, if you've read through the contract at all, there are some performance objectives. We have to keep a certain amount of retro reflectivity to it.
Okay, so that was one of my questions.
Yeah.
So what on earth is retro reflectivity?
It's just how
It sounds like
reflective
a
the sign
design
is.
thing.
You shoot light at it, and then the light bounces back. And depending on how bright that is, that's your retro reflectivity.
And
So it's higher visibility. And there's a new standard to give motorists at night better visibility.
And we're getting a retro reflectometer or something?
We'll get a handheld kind of a light gun that you put against the sign, and we'll get values on our signs, and then we'll get an instrument that shoots the road, similar to, and we'll get it off the markings. And so once a year, we'll get values, submit that to CDOT, and then that's our way of proving that we're using their road wisely.
And then, under the agreement, under section 4B1, it just states that it shall not exceed a maximum amount of $29,152.56. And I'm wondering how hard and fast that is. I know you already
It's a
stated.
partnership. We have to have a contract in place, but ultimately it's a partnership where it's got to work for both agencies. One thing we've talked about is we have no idea what's out there now. No one's ever taken these values. There is the possibility that everything's going to need a one-time replacement in the next year because none of it meets the standard. In that case, we'll have to have a new conversation and maybe get additional funds to bring it all up to standard. But those are things we have to figure out together. And this is our starting point to at least get something formalized.
So, yeah, I was just going to say where I was going with this was basically I didn't want to find out that we're stuck with the bill if it's higher because we've signed this IGA saying it can't go over this a certain amount.
Yeah, ultimately it's CDOT's responsibility. They reimburse us. Some of this language here is to protect them from us just going out and spending willy-nilly and not saying, hey, by the way, we're trending well beyond $29,000. So it's protection both ways.
And also, my other concern would be if we're trying to keep within the budget, we kind of cut corners because we don't want to charge CDOT over the $29,000. That was just my other concern that could happen, may not happen, I don't know. But it's a thought on my mind that I wouldn't want the road to be compromised in any way.
I don't worry about this. It is what it
Okay.
is. We got to get out there. It's got to meet a certain standard, and we'll meet that standard regardless. And then whatever that budget trends out to be over the next few years, that's where we'll be at.
yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that the difference of not having an IGA and having an IGA doesn't put us in a bind.
We'll have a good idea. Once we start the work, we'll have a good idea where we're going to be at, and then we'll start talking to CDOT if it looks like it's going to be more than this, and we'll have to come back and revise the agreement.
Clearly having the
That
IGA
sounds great.
protects us.
What?
Clearly having the IGA protects us. The last 3 years, we've actually kind of done this work at risk, right? Because there is no contract that says we'll be reimbursed.
And, that's better than protection. I mean, the opportunity to do striping there, not that we all love to stripe, but having the flexibility to do that without having to go through some CDOT process is going to be very helpful, so.
Yep.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Williams?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Town of Superior Resolution R-24 Series 2011, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation for maintenance of traffic control devices.
Motion by Trustee Williams, is there a second? Second, Trustee Skumatz. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. I don't think we're spending any money. I think we're maybe getting money.
Getting money.
And we are unanimous.
Yeah, we are unanimous, exactly. Adoption of brings us to item number 8, adoption of a resolution opposing the Jefferson Parkway. Mr. Magley?
Thank you. For consideration of the board is a resolution opposing the construction of the proposed Jefferson Parkway toll road. This toll road is a 10-mile section of road that connects State Highway 128 south down to State Highway 93, proposed to use a portion of 300 feet of right-of-way along Indiana. This proposed toll road has the potential to accelerate development in the South Jefferson County area, accelerating growth, accelerating traffic, cut-through traffic through the town of Superior with significant traffic noise and environmental impacts on the town, on McCaslin Boulevard especially, and potentially negative environmental impacts to the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. Our future plans for McCaslin Boulevard are to maintain it as a 2-lane road, and any increases to traffic on this road are discouraged by the town. As a result of this, we've submitted a resolution for the board to consider opposing the Jefferson Parkway toll road.
Okay, questions from the board or comments from anybody? So just maybe I should say that we had a work session prior to this meeting where we considered some of the issues associated with the parkway. Those issues include potential health risks associated with construction in the Rocky Flats buffer zone. We're concerned about the traffic that's going to be on McCaslin. We're concerned that there will be significant negative impacts upon the intersections at US 36, significant negative impacts for pedestrians to get across the road to access the open space that we have just spent money and worked with the county to protect and to have residents and people throughout the county be able to enjoy, and that we, I think, have been diligent in trying to work with the Jefferson Parkway to describe what our concerns have been, and we always like to partner with other agencies, municipalities, and counties, and so far have been unable to engage them, and they haven't been willing to address our concerns. And so I, for one, would say that I would be supportive of this resolution, assuming that we can't come up with some reasonable accommodation from the Parkway. Trustee Williams?
I would like to make one change to the resolution here. With the first whereas, it says the Jefferson Parkway is a proposed toll road that is intended to connect to the Northwest Parkway. I'd like it to say that it is not intended to connect to the Northwest Parkway.
That would be more accurate.
That is accurate. like to reflect that.
Other board comments regarding this particular
I
issue?
have, if I can
Bennington?
expound on that, I have the same issue. The toll road, in its purest sense, was to connect Northwest Parkway with E470 so as to complete the entire loop. And as we have discussed earlier, it does neither of those. It doesn't connect to Northwest Parkway, and it doesn't connect to E470. In fact, it does connect Interlochen Parkway to 93, right? Okay. So I would like to either say it was intended to connect Northwest Parkway and 470 but fails to do so, or let's be explicit and says proposed toll road that connects Interlochen Parkway, whatever the official name of that is, to 93.
We could say Highway 128 to Highway 93.
Right. Because there is a huge misconception among those who are not carefully following this issue that, in fact, it completes the loop. And we know it does not complete the loop.
And there could be some wording in here expressing that the Beltway is not being completed with this extension of Jefferson Parkway.
We could say something like it purports to but does not connect the Northwest Parkway and Highway 93 to minimize rewording.
Well, it
And get
purports to connect Northwest
That's what's-
Parkway with E470 and does not do so. So, Ms.
Is that the
Attorney,
first whereas? That's what we're talking about?
So,
Yes.
so
you know, it's all
changes.
about-
We're talking about
minimize-
a lot of changes here.
I'm just trying to minimize the changes so we can get this passed.
Just the first whereas.
I do have one more little preposition down on the fourth whereas, construction of a roadway in the refuge. Are we accurate when we say in the refuge? I thought we defined the refuge as that inside the fence, and this constructs a roadway adjacent to the refuge,
You just say along the refuge.
along the
That's a good
refuge.
Well,
I think it is in
wait
the
a minute.
I think it is in the refuge.
Because you're
I'm-
You have to
purchasing,
donate
Yeah,
the
that's right.
refuge land.
I'm
you're
asking.
purchasing over 100 acres of the wildlife
That's true.
refuge.
Yep, so it is in the refuge.
So
Any
where
other-
are they on rewording the first bullet?
Well, the first,
I'm
That's-
waiting
first
for.
wouldn't it just say the Jefferson Parkway is a proposed toll road that is not intended to connect the Northwest Parkway, but instead connects Highway 128 to Highway 93?
Merely?
Okay.
But instead connects Highway 128.
To Highway 93.
Well, then I do it, add the word only.
That's what I meant by merely.
Only.
Yes.
Instead of only connects Highway.
With an exclamation point after it.
Okay. And what was that?
was it.
That was it? Okay.
And I guess my only add would be that we, whereas the town of Superior has worked diligently trying to work with the Parkway Authority to mitigate issues and have not, something to the effect that have not been able to do so, just so that it's clear that we're not just stomping our feet and say, no, go home, but that we're actually trying to work with them somehow to address these concerns.
So whereas,
But you want to make sure that that states that it's not on the fault of the town of Superior.
Correct. I want to make sure that people are, as a communication device, which whereases frequently are, I want to make sure that everyone knows that we've done, worked with the previous EIS, worked with the Parkway Authority trying to find some reasonable accommodation and have not been able to do so.
so I have whereas the town of Superior has worked diligently
With the authority.
To try, I thought it was to try to.
I was going to
Been
say, I don't know
trying,
that
yeah.
with is the proper
Yeah,
Yeah,
did not
position
work.
there.
with means that there's two parties engaged.
Exactly.
Has
That's true.
attempted.
It attempted.
Attempted to work with,
To have its concerns addressed unsuccessfully.
has attempted to have its concerns
I love crafting on the fly.
I
Committee
tell how
crafting.
much I like this.
Yeah. So why
Has
don't you?
attempted to have its concerns addressed
Regarding this parkway.
Regarding the
Regarding
concerns
issues?
mentioned above or
Yeah.
listed above.
of the concerns listed above addressed by by the authority.
Mm-hmm.
To no avail.
To no avail. There you go.
To no avail.
Yep.
Okay.
That captured.
Yeah, you want to read it all back?
Sure. So I've added right before the last whereas. So it reads now, whereas the current design of the Jefferson Parkway will create negative impacts on the town of Superior, including without limitation increased traffic and increased noise. Whereas the town of Superior has attempted to have the concerns listed above addressed by the JPPHA to no avail, and whereas the JPPHA has not presented any plan to address the environmental health and safety concerns or to mitigate the negative impacts of the Jefferson Parkway on the town of Superior.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Got it.
Okay, thanks.
Where's the to no avail?
I read it.
She said it. All right.
All right. Other questions or comments from the board? Public comment regarding this particular issue? Seeing non-action by the board, Trustee Skomax?
I'd like to make a motion.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like
Lisa,
to,
Yeah.
could we have read back the first whereas as it was finalized?
Sure.
Sure. Hold on. Whereas the Jefferson Parkway is a proposed toll road that is not intended to connect the Northwest Parkway and Highway 93 through Broomfield and Jefferson counties, but instead only connects. Highway 128.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Do you want to say was originally intended to connect the Northwest
Yes.
Parkway?
Yes.
Okay.
To E470.
2E470.
Was originally conceived
To complete the beltway was really what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Was originally conceived to complete the Beltway from Northwest Parkway to E470, but now only connects
Well, it doesn't connect the
128
Northwest
to
Parkway
93.
470 is, I mean, in its complete sense, it was supposed to connect
The Beltway,
what is it on, what is the road by, that comes up the Hogback in South Denver? What is that highway? Is that, that's not W470, is that E470? C470?
C470.
Thank you. I know that there's a lot of alphabets there.
Yes.
I mean, really, the plan was to connect C470 with the Northwest Parkway.
That is true.
So the Jefferson Parkway is a proposed toll road that was intended to connect the Northwest Parkway with C470.
Completing the
But
beltway.
instead-
And complete the beltway.
And
Beltway is not a, you know, we can use it, but it's not a technical term, so
and complete, or no, yes?
it's fine.
And complete the Beltway.
That would complete the beltway.
But instead.
That would complete the Beltway. But instead only connects Highway 128 to Highway 93.
Works.
Okay.
Read it one more time.
Whereas the Jefferson Parkway is a proposed toll road that was intended to connect the Northwest Parkway with C470 that would complete the Beltway, but instead only connects Highway 128 to Highway 93.
That captures.
Okay. So I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number 25, Series 2011, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior opposing the construction of the Jefferson Parkway in its current configuration.
Motion by Trustee Skumac, second by Trustee Williams. All in favor? It's unanimous. And just for the record, I think this is not the modus operandi for the Town of Superior. We always like to work with our, neighboring municipalities and counties and other organizations, and it's unfortunately come to this situation. So it's unfortunate to be here, and my hope is that we'll be able to move forward in the future. With that brings us to my finger going to the outline. Sorry.
Item
Number 9. which is an approval of an ordinance modifying the vendor fee for the town of Superior. Mr. Magley.
Thank you. This is a continuation of a discussion the board had at their April 25th meeting, which is their last meeting, discussing an ordinance modifying the vendor fee. Paul Nils, our finance director, and his staff have provided some additional information for the board to consider. I think specific questions that the board had from their last meeting were whether or not we could determine a nexus between the actual collection costs of a business and what the vendor fee is. He has provided some information with regard to the State of Washington Department of Revenue study that was conducted, as well as the City of Fort Collins conducted their own study in 2001 and 2002, and the PricewaterhouseCoopers group also conducted a study with regard to this issue for the board's consideration. Another question that was asked by the board at the last meeting was how many vendors collect sales tax. We got a solid number on that. It's 174 vendors in town, and provided a couple of charts for the board to consider as far as giving you some options. If you went with this percentage of vendor fee at this cap, this is how many people it affects, and this is what our revenue impacts are to the town. So I think it gives you some options to consider on as far as when you start discussing amongst yourself what those impacts are going to look like, not only to the vendors and how many are affected, but also what the impacts, financial impacts to the town are as well. We have also provided, just to get a scope of what some of these impacts would be on our budget, we'd give you some comparisons on what they would look like. We wouldn't go through and just cut one of those items. We would go through the entire budget and kind of cut from a number of areas just to try to lessen impact on one specific area. But we wanted to give you an idea of what the scope would be.
So we wouldn't eliminate the clerk?
No, I wouldn't propose that. So we've included the ordinance. We have to let the state of Colorado Department of Revenue know by May 16th. So we would like a decision by the board tonight so we can let them know what our vendor fee is going to be. But we have an option of keeping it at zero for the remainder of this year so it doesn't affect this year's budget, and then increase it in 2012, which we can then plan for during the budget process. However, if the board wanted to do something this year, then we would need to go back as a staff and determine where those budget reductions are going to happen for this year, and then bring that back for the board to see. So, giving you plenty of options. Kind of left the ordinance with some holes to fill once the board decides what they want to do.
Great. Thanks for the detailed background. It's very helpful. Trustee Skumatz.
So I tried to do a bit of research on this, and one of the things, I also came up with a few questions on this additional information from town. So under one, is there the nexus question? So the A, B, and C studies, it doesn't, or the A and B studies, it doesn't mention what percent the vendor fee was set at that led to an overcollection or a considerable over, more than covering the cost. So I'm wondering what percent the state of Washington used in that study and what Fort Collins used. Was it 2.2%, 3.3%, some other number? At what level did this overcollection happen?
I'll ask Paul Mills to come up, and I know the city of Fort Collins ultimately went to 0%, but I don't know what the initial percentage was. Do you have that?
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Paul Mills, town staff. Trustee Skumatz, it was very, very difficult actually to try to find these source studies.
Sure.
I had dialogue with a couple of ex-finance directors with the city of Fort Collins who took that Washington study and then applied it to their city, and they could not recall the initial percent. I got a request in to the Department of Revenue, State of Washington, to try to find the initial study, but it's not how we typically like to do these reports, but I'm sorry we don't have any more definitive information for you.
Well, I think the way that question was posed, or the way that discussion happens, and what I'm seeing above for caps and that sort of thing, implies that the definition or the nexus that they were trying to reach was covering the labor cost of calculating what the sales tax ought to be, or that's the only part that they were concerned with. And otherwise, I think the other place that a cost can occur, and we talked a little bit about this last time, was the issue that, and we can debate whether or not it's something we ought to be considering as part of these costs or not, and that's something the board has to decide. But so there's the actual physical labor cost of doing the computations of this is how much our sales tax would be, and in that case I can 100% see why they would say an unlimited percent of pretty much a lot of percentages would more than cover that cost for a whole hunk of businesses. Where I think another question comes up is that, and I'm a big believer in sort of this. I see this as a cost recovery thing. I don't see this as more than that, and that's where I'm really headed. But there's another cost that we can decide whether or not we think is appropriate to have covered out of this, and that is when businesses take credit cards, the sales tax that we collect also gets the credit card fee on it. And depending on what share of the business, which credit cards the business takes, and depending on what share of their revenues come from credit cards versus cash, that number could be continuing up to as much as their revenues are figure. And if they take a fair share of MasterCard or whatever, MasterCard and Visa, that's going to be a little bit less than if they also take American Express. Maybe their cost is 2.2 or 2.2%, but only that maybe that gets discounted by the fact that only 70-80% of their, or maybe a little bit more of that 2 or 2.2% is actually credit card versus cash sales, and so that might discount it to 1.9% or something like that. Anyway, so I think we have to decide a couple of things, and one is what is this meant to be? Is it a reimbursement cost or not? If it's a reimbursement cost, is it a reimbursement cost of physically calculating the revenues that ought to come to town, or is it a reimbursement for the extra cost that they may be incurring because of the way that sales taxes are charged? I think there are a couple of questions here.
I don't think this is actually a reimbursement cost, because it's called either a vendor fee or a service fee. And businesses that collect sales tax are providing a service to our town as vendors of collecting this accurately and getting it submitted in a timely manner. So that's what this service fee is for, not necessarily for them to recover their costs.
And I think there's allowance for difference of opinion here. And so I think that's what you think. I interpret it more as a reimbursement, and I think that so do these other towns, because otherwise Boulder wouldn't put 0, there wouldn't be a cap of 200 and 100 in Broomfield and Lafayette. And to me, that implies to me that they're talking about what costs are we trying to recover, and where do we cap those?
Trustee Brennan?
Obviously, we've been in alignment with the state over the course of history, and the state, by virtue of their own actions, don't view it as a cost. They have done 3.3% as a service fee. They have not attempted to, that I know, any of these studies don't suggest they've attempted to assess what the costs to a business are. So I think they are viewing it as a service fee. However, if we choose to go down the route of cost, I would ask us all to look at 1C on the cover memo. And it says, "The general report findings noted that the cost of collections was 13.47% of sales tax collected for small retailers, those under $1 million in annual sales, 5.2% for mid-sized retailers, and 2.17% for large retailers." So if in fact we're going to be cost structured, we've got to take that into account, I think, and have a staggered program. But to me, the history we've had is following the state, and the state, obviously by its language, they've modified their online documents. They don't call it a vendor fee anymore. They call it a service fee. So that means fee for service, in my opinion. But I found this 1C information to be very helpful.
Other board thoughts about this?
Yeah.
Trustee Cirilli?
I fall in the thought process that we've always followed the state, and so probably what we should continue to do in my thinking. But the only difference is that I would like to avoid the impact of this year's budget implications and postpone it till 2012 budget. And so we know what the state's doing. In 2012, they're going to 3.3%, anticipate that in our budget projections for next year. And then from that point on, just try to keep our ears to the ground on what the state's doing. But that's what we've always done. And had they not gone to zero, this never would have been an issue.
Well, I think from staff's perspective, we understand that the board may want to have a vendor fee percentage reinstalled. We would recommend that you have some sort of a cap, whatever the board feels comfortable. And that second chart is a good chart for the board to look at as far as whatever vendor fee percentage the board, if you wanted to go with that, and what the cap, if you decide to go with the cap, and how many actual vendors in town that would impact.
Trustee Williams?
No.
Or Trustee Hanson?
We've found examples of other towns, and including Fort Collins. But when you researched them, did you look and see what else they're doing for their businesses as far as economic development goes?
Well, that's the other thing. We've talked about that, and that's something that we, I think, can consider during the 2012 budget development process. If we wanted to do some type of program for existing businesses where we assist them with whatever it might be, whether it's improvements to their buildings or advertising or something, with the board, we can provide you with information on other cities and what they have as far as programs like that, and we could budget for it in 2012, whatever dollar amount the board decides, and then businesses could submit to get funding for whatever we decide we want to use that money for.
Trustee Williams?
Just
Okay.
wanted,
All right,
I pulled the study from Fort Collins. They're creating and sustaining a great community, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for that community. So I can see justification for eliminating the service fee from that community. But when we provide nothing, I would say that we can leave it in place until we get something in place.
So I just have to break in for 1/2 moment, because I don't think that we provide nothing. We provide an incredible garden plot for businesses to thrive in here, and that's why we've been successful, much more so than any other community in the region. So, I just have to take a little umbrage at the fact that we think that we do nothing for business here. So, Trustee Scott, sir, Trustees. I've been trying to call on Trustee
I
Williams
know,
for a while.
but I wanted him to finish his thoughts. So for me, I see there's many different aspects to what you want to call the big picture. And for me, the big picture is state statute has, it was at 3.3, they changed it to 0, and now they're changing it back to 2.2 and eventually to 3.3. And we've always followed state statute. We have never brought forth something completely different. We've never brought forth, in the past when it was 3.3, to put a cap on it, to change the amount based on what works for our town. And so I feel that we should be consistent, and we should go the way that we have always gone and go with state statute.
Well, and I understand that point of view. I would just say, just because we followed the state in the past doesn't mean
I
we'll follow
understand
the
that.
state in the future.
I get that.
Okay.
Trustees Comatz and then Trustee DeGrosse.
And I look at, what I see for some of the other towns, and I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think people think Broomfield is a business unfriendly place. I mean, oh my God, they've like totally exploded, and they have a cap. I do think that it's worth relooking at what is it that the businesses actually incur, because to me, a service fee doesn't say you're trying to just give them, or a service fee, or whatever they've changed the name to, vendor fee, service fee. It still doesn't say what the structure should be, and it still doesn't say what that number should be. And it's not a service, it's not a, to me, it's still meant to be linked back to something real. And to me, based on the calculations, based on meetings, based on other things, I can't justify a number that's greater than 2.2%. I can't figure out how we would, in this day and age, we would justify a number that's greater than 2.2% of the sales tax. That's only if we're not trying to just recover the actual time and whatever that it takes to do that calculation. I think to do that calculation is generally in this day and age less than that kind of dollar figure. So the only way that I can see that we have an impact on the businesses merely because of credit card processing problems that we provide in terms of an extra cost to them. That's the only way I can justify the 2.2% even. So I would be more interested perhaps in seeing us keep the zero for the rest of the year because of the budget, and maybe consider moving to 2.2% next year. I'd be even happier if we had a cap on it of some amount, but I could go with 2.2%. I can't see 3.3% being a justification, and I think that the Price Waterhouse study is interesting, but I don't think. Remember that that's the percent of the sales tax collected for those small businesses. It's still, I think it's still the numbers we've been talking about have never been anything like 13 or 5 or anything like that. I wouldn't like us to see us even consider a complicated step function.
Trustee DeGrosse.
So I think this is a complicated issue, and we have clearly a variety of points of view. It's not just two. It's 3 or 4 of them on the board. So I feel like when the state went to zero, that this town benefited from that, correct?
Correct.
So
You mean the whole town, or somebody lost and somebody won?
The town budget.
the town, us.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
talking about us, right. So the town benefited from that. So it would seem unfair now that the state's changes for us to not go along with the state. That's how I see it from my point of view. Now, having said that, I agree with Trustee Cirelli in that I would most likely will vote this down at this point. But I think, so it doesn't mess our budget for 2011, that we should do this in January 1st of 2012, so we can include it in next year's budget.
Trustee Bennington.
I agree, sort of in theory, with you and Trustee Cirelli. However, I would like to raise some budget questions that I believe may allow us to be able to do this as of May 15th or whenever it's activated. We have a placeholder in the budget currently for $3.5 million for wind turbines. We also have, I believe, a placeholder for the underpass in Rock Creek. If we choose the path that has been suggested by some of us on the board, by ProStack and by Planning Commission, we just sandblast that to the expense of $15,000 as opposed to $85,000 for sandblasting and adding decorative rock. Net savings there of $70,000. So I do believe that in the budget, for those I call them placeholders, but yet unappropriated costs, that we will have the money in this year's budget to be able to accommodate going along with the state at 2.2%, and that's what I'd like to see us do.
Just to be clear, the town isn't going to spend $3 million this year on wind turbines, so that's not.
But there's something in there that's significant for this year.
It's, well, it's in the budget because it's moving from different accounts.
But I do believe we will be able to accommodate this at the 2.2% level within the existing budget without making any of those other cuts that were put for example purposes in the cover memo. So if staff's in disagreement with me, I'd like to hear from staff why that couldn't happen.
If the board decides to implement the 2.2% this year, we will have to go back and come up with budget cuts for the year, yeah. We will first look at general fund.
But in your general, in your list of items you gave us attached to this memo, it, for example, didn't deal with that $70,000 delta potential on the underpass, and it didn't.
No, we didn't list
Okay.
that. Yeah.
So there are ways that, frankly, we as a board have not voted on that, and if we as a board voted for the sandblasting, there is $70,000 right there, right?
We're not
That would be
voting on it
available?
tonight.
No, I mean, that's a project that's moving forward, but with just the sandblasting, it was significant. It was, I think, 25 or 30,000, just the sandblasting portion of it. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's.
You get my
Yeah,
gist.
I mean,
Yeah.
But there
We'll
will be an
have to go
adjustment,
back.
that's the bottom line.
Right. I went back to
If the
the.
board doesn't want to wait
yeah.
until 2012,
Right.
which is what we suggest before, then we'll have to go back and do some cutting.
Let's see. Trustee Hanson? I'd like to see this come back when it comes back with the state at 2.2%. Is it July? But it seems reasonable if we wait till January 1, but we make it 3.3% January 1, that we add it into the budget, we do it through the budgeting process, and we plan for it, that 3.3% in January. And I think that's a nice compromise.
I think 3.3% is too high. In meeting, even with town businesses, 2.2% is about what they've just cut, what their costs are.
But again, we go back to the discussion on what is it really for.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Trustee Srelly.
Okay, try to capsulize my thoughts on this. Again, I believe we stay with where we are budget-wise for 2011, change 2012. My thinking was change to what the state is doing in 2012, which would be 3.3. If we have,
No,
That's not
true.
correct.
when are they changing?
And again, I apologize, this wasn't in the cover, but I just got the information today after the governor signed the long bill on Friday, the state's current plan over the next 3 fiscal years, and they do a mid-year fiscal year, so.
Okay, so we can still
July to
plan
June,
that.
Next 3 fiscal years, they're proposing to have the vendor fee at 2.2%, and then in fiscal year, I think it was 2014, 2015, then it raises to
Okay.
3.33.
So anyway, well, that's even better. My thinking was go with the state until 2012. If we have a better idea or a different idea of what this fee should cover than what the state is charging, address it sometime before our budget discussions and come to agreement on that. My whole idea of not changing it budget-wise this year is we cannot sit here and predict how we should change our budget or whether it will need to be changed for this. I don't want to do that. I don't know how we're going to vote on anything between now and the end of the year, even though this isn't the way to address the budget tonight. I think if we're going to change to 2.2% or go with the state as of this mid-year change, then we're going to have to assume there's budget cuts. Because that's not the assumption we had in making last year's budget. And so if we want to consider some of Trustee Skumatz's thoughts on what this true cost is and what something other than what the state is charging, that should be a discussion that happens between now and the next budget, but not try to resolve it tonight, I guess. But my thinking right now is go with the state, except that we'll do it as of January 1st, whatever the state is doing. That's my preference.
Trustees' comments?
And I recognize that some of the board is interested in providing additional benefits, incentives, whatever to businesses, but I don't think this is the way to do it. I think we want to be transparent about how we're providing business benefits, and we make sure that we provide business benefits that make sense. And in this case, if you said it, you may be relatively hurting businesses that you don't mean to be hurting, because because it costs different businesses different amounts to do this. So I think if we want to provide business incentives, this is not the way to do it, but rather this is something we should be doing as part of costs.
Just a quick question. How is this not transparent, though?
No, it's not transparent who wins. Because some businesses it's going to cost relatively more, some businesses it's going to cost relatively less.
Yeah. I mean, the benefit to some businesses
Won't be as obvious as you think.
greater.
But given the
It's a
Price
percentage.
Waterhouse study, unless we go with a staggered cost,
Costco and Target will be retaining
Well, I
a
mean,
whole bunch of money.
You could also,
that
Retaining
will,
a whole bunch of money.
excuse me?
I was going to say, if we don't do something, basically the big winners here, Costco, Target.
And they're the biggest providers to our town.
Okay, all I'm
There are
saying
lots
is
of
that
ways for us to.
Well, and at
That's why- that's why the
2.2%, they aren't the big winners, because it costs them 2.18% for large retailers over 10 million, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah,
So, I mean, they're at par, basically, at that point.
okay, anyway.
All right, now how do we proceed?
And I guess my only thoughts about the state, it's not my fault the state made a bad decision about going here. And so if they make a bad decision, I don't want to have to say, I do that too. Because if they're taking, I think the $60 million figure was talked about, that they'll be losing or giving to business or however it looks, that money's coming out of education and it's coming out of transportation. And so if that's, I'm not sure that makes a whole bunch of sense, but just to be clear. I'll entertain any motion
Well,
anybody would like to take.
I mean, I'm just gonna, one last, if the board were to adopt a 2.2% vendor fee with a $500 monthly cap, 168 of the vendors, the current collective fee would recoup 100% of the vendor. Is another way, I mean, to look at that from our perspective.
But not their cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would.
No, you're saying the vendor
The
fee.
full two.
You're making lots of assumptions in that. And I'm going to, I know PricewaterhouseCoopers does things in a very scientifically sound manner. So of all these things I'm reading, I'm paying attention to this data. So I think it's premature to even attempt to put a cap on. If we want to go down the route of a cap, I am perfectly happy with, as suggested, I think, by Joe, that we do future study and we come up and not try to rush that through. Obviously, the state, I disagree with the mayor, the state is not doing this willy-nilly.
I don't know if they're doing it willy-nilly. It's just factual that there's only just some discretionary money that they can spend. And that money's coming out of education and transportation.
Well, I don't have the facts on that, but our course has been with the state, and given that we don't have specific ideas of how we want to proceed and where these caps should fairly lie, et cetera, I can't imagine going down that route tonight.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion. Anybody?
Public doesn't comment on this?
Yep, certainly. If there's public comment, if there's new public comment compared to the last public comment.
Well, why are you looking at me?
because the two public comments are sitting in the middle row.
It will be different.
Oh, okay.
I hope. First of all, I appreciate the conversation that everybody's having, because I view it as important to my business, and I believe other businesses, even though they're not here, believe it's important to their business. Kind of a food for thought. I received
Would
a
you
letter.
give us your name and your address?
I'm sorry, Pete Messimer, 100 Superior Plaza Way with Superior Liquor. I received on June 1st of 2009 notification from the town of Superior that on July 1st of 2009, my sales tax vendor fee or my service fee would be eliminated. And I can tell you that I was almost midway through my year's budget when I got notification. So I do appreciate Trustee Sorelli's desire to have at least 6 months' notice to respond to it. It wasn't something that was offered to the retailers in the town of Superior, but again, I do appreciate this as food for thought. I do have a question that I'd like to ask, and that is, how does sales tax collection compare to budget first quarter?
We're flat.
Flat. Okay, so at least there's not a loss there. I was hoping there'd be a gain for my argument, but without that, I'll move on to my third and final point, or actually the third of 4 points. The cap. The cap sounds like a great idea not to give to a lot of big retailers. And ironically, they're the most important retailers to the town as far as money flows, I would assume. There is no cap on credit card charges on the sales tax I collect. If I sell $100 million worth of product, my credit card processing liability goes up with every dollar of sales tax I collect. So there is no cap that I can enjoy on the one side to offset any cap that might be put on my business here. In July of 2009, basically an opportunity for a windfall for the town of Superior came in, and I don't doubt at all the reason and motivation to follow it. One, because there was a bylaw that I certainly wasn't aware of. Two, again, because there was an opportunity. So the budget in 2009 was certainly enhanced well beyond anybody's expectation for that budget year, which may or may not have been put in reserve, may have been used for some of the projects or the beginning of projects that are now in jeopardy. I certainly don't have any interest in seeing this town go backward economically, financially, or developmentally in terms of what is on the table. But again, it is a very important amount of money for me. I view it in disagreement with some. I view it as a service fee. I view it as something that I can do that you can't. I mean, it would be unrealistic. So the question really is, what would it cost you to go out and collect sales tax on the monies that we sell versus what does it necessarily cost me to collect them for you? And that's true of any service organization. You provide a service that you can't or don't want to do yourself. So that all said, I do appreciate very much the quality of conversation you've had on an issue very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment regarding this issue? Board action? Trustee Skumatz?
Well, I guess we could make a motion that, according to what I've been hearing from various board members, and I guess that would be to revise this ordinance to reflect that we would maintain the vendor fee at zero through December 31st, as it says in here, but then move in accordance with the state starting in January. That's, I guess, what I was hearing, at least from Trustee Sorelli, and it seems like a compromise I could potentially live with.
Second.
So a motion and a second regarding this issue. Further discussion?
So if we don't vote in favor of that, then it just expires and it goes to 2.2%.
Or you can make another motion, right?
I would still like to see, if we wait in budget for it, that we increase it to 3.3% in January, back to what it was before.
Greater than the state.
If the state's going to be less than 3.3%, yes.
Okay, well, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion regarding
Is
this?
this a motion to amend the ordinance on the tape? I'm sorry.
We're filling in the
Okay,
this one. Yeah.
May I? So we're going
Yeah.
to say through December 31st, 2011, and then starting on January 1st, 2012.
Going to go
Goes
with
to the state.
the state.
Okay, I need to rewrite this. Okay.
Which is 2.2% of what we hear from the state.
A process question. Is this a new first reading? Or we defeated the first reading last time, and I thought the attorney who filled in.
Approval of an ordinance.
Yeah, you're approved.
So the attorney who sat in last time said that we would have to, I interpreted her as saying we had to do a new first reading.
No.
You never need a first reading. So.
That's a
Okay.
board.
Okay.
So the ordinance would read, starting on January 1st, 2012, vendors shall be entitled to collect a vendor fee allowed by the state.
Except that at that point in time, the vendor fee allowed by the state would be 0, so I think it needs to say
No.
something.
No.
It'd be
It goes to
2.2.
2.2% this year.
Oh, this year,
Yeah.
thank you. Great.
So you can vote to defeat it if you don't like the amendment right now and make a new proposal that you have sufficient votes for.
So, and while I'd
Or
love to see
Yeah.
some sort of cap, but I guess this is, I think people know where I'm coming from, but I guess this is a reasonable accommodation of the general consensus of the board. Anybody else have any comments regarding that? All in favor? Israeli, Skumatz, Muckle, Gregoris, opposed, Hanson, Williams, and and Pennington. So that motion carries.
Tired?
Did you oppose? Did you oppose?
Raising a hand.
Raise
Oh, I
your
posed.
Yes, you opposed
Sorry.
it. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you.
Just one comment, this will be ordinance number 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So that passed.
That passed. Thank you, Lisa. Anything else about this issue? Let's see, that brings us to item number 10, which is a motion and actually information for the Marshall Road triple left improvements. Mr. Magnet.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff's bringing this back to the board for approval to proceed with final design of the Marshall-McCaslin intersection, or the addition of a third left at the intersection at Marshall and McCaslin. Staff, Kurt Cower, Public Works and Utilities Director, presented this to the Planning Commission. We had good feedback from the Planning Commission at that meeting. He's revised the presentation that was included in the packet to the board to include some variations to signage that we might want to consider. We still have to get approval from CDOT. The costs now that are estimated for these improvements are estimated to be at $75,000. If the board gives us the go-ahead for final design, we would do the final design, seek approval from the Colorado Department of Transportation, and then bring it back to the board for approval of a contract for the improvements. So there's another step in this process for the board approval besides tonight's action. Kurt Coar is here, our Public Works Director. The presentation is on the screen if we'd like to look at it, and available for any questions the board might have with regard to these improvements.
Trustee
And I have a
Skumatz.
tiny little comment, and that is, this is a CIP type thing. In the future, can we have the CIP form in the in our documentation, please?
Yeah.
Good point.
Kurt, I have to say I do like the smiley faces and the grumpy faces. It's very nice.
Trying to represent how we feel when we're trying. So just to close the loop, once again, I'm Kurt Coar, Public Works Director. We'll do a quick close the loop on where we were and kind of where we've ended up. Questions at any time. Again, this is Marshall Road, McCaslin Boulevard, triple left, board update. It is a 2011 approved CIP for $100,000. Our original goals were to provide dedicated lanes for safety. The left lane, that was an inside lane going to Boulder. There's also discussion about adding Louisville into that lane. Center lane going to Louisville, and a right lane that would end up in merge into US 36 to Denver. And then that lane would also have a straight through into the town center area. We also want to look at increasing our intersection level of service and our side street level of service. So we looked at that. We looked at that in the peak hours and then the Saturday peaks. So peak hours during the weekday and Saturday peaks. And we had queues during the weekday peaks that backed up past First Street and sometimes in the Second. Saturday queues went all the way back sometimes to Sycamore. And we were able to show in the model that we could reduce our queues during our weekday peak, provide better service to Second Street, a little better service to First Street because there are more lanes to get to turn left, and reduce those queues overall. We did talk about the queues on Saturdays are still long, and that's just a function of how many cars can get to the intersection. So in area number 1, we were able to, on McCaslin, try to increase safety by trying to eliminate some of the emerging, and we'll do some restriping in that area. Area number 2, there'll be 3 lanes, 3 left turn lanes, 2 left turn lanes, 1 left turn / through lane, using the existing lanes we have. We had talked about adding another left turn lane into the median, decided not to do that, and then where you see the 3s at First and Second, we're increasing the level of service for those access streets. So, had a lot of good discussion here, I think on March 28th, and then we took that to the Planning Commission on April 19th. Feedback we received both from the Planning Commission and from public comment, I think overall everybody likes the project. Some people have concerns about putting in a triple left. I think there's a level of discomfort there that is just, there's not many of them around. So what is that going to be like? Is it going to be hard to drive? But overall, it's well supported. The costs should be considered as felt to be an important component of that. And the overhead sign that we had talked about, a lot of people felt that was too big, too lit up, would have some impact on the residential. So we heard that. We also heard to consider bike lanes. There is a bike lane on Marshall Road. However, there's not a bike lane through the intersection right now, but it was discussed to maybe add a bike lane. Something we can certainly look at in the final configuration. And then also, as there was discussion in here regarding the right turn pocket near the gas station, there was also discussion in the Planning Commission regarding that. And if the queues in that left turn / through lane got too long, you may get cut off trying to get to that right turn pocket. And so that was certainly some discussion as well.
Are the minutes for the Planning Commission ready? Are they available to read?
No, they weren't at the time.
Okay.
They, let's see, that included.
I kind of like reading their discussion,
Yeah.
even though, I mean, I know you're summarizing it, which is fine too.
Sure.
But
They did
long
recommend
discussion.
the town proceed with these improvements.
What?
They did recommend the town proceed with the improvements. Correct. So what we kind of took out of that were some modifications to the signage, and we stuck with the lane configurations we had discussed. Working with our $100,000 budget, we said, well, we'll need about $15,000 to complete the design and get through the CDOT approval if we were to move forward. Signal improvements will be around $40,000. Those also include the restriping and some of the concrete work we talked about on the medians. The roadside signage has been reduced. If you remember, previously it was about $60,000, and so that's gone down. For a total cost right now, we're estimating a rough order of magnitude of $75,000 to move forward. This is kind of the new concept for signage. Still try to provide something that you can see easily and can communicate well to the traveling public where to be, but significantly less of an impact, and we've tried to dress it up a little bit. That was one of the other things we heard with aesthetics.
I'm just kind of curious as to why, because I really liked the sign, the overhead sign that you had before. And maybe I wasn't at the last meeting when that was discussed, but I don't see this as an improvement. I actually see it as
Well, I mean, the overhead sign is
huge.
It's huge, but it's definitely
But it
clear to
communicates
people.
where you want to go. It's a
Right.
triple left is a very unique situation. Like you said, there are not many triple lefts in the whole state of Colorado, so we need to have very clear signs, and the overhead signs to me are much, much clearer and better.
And
I
this is
really
just an
don't like
option.
this at all.
I mean, there's
Yeah, I always fall back to this. So we're closing the loop on what we heard, and ultimately you're making the decision on how we move forward. And
Do you have can you show the picture of the overhead for just
Sure
1 second?
can.
There you go.
there you go.
And I think one of the problems with that was we needed to move it back farther so people get in the lanes early enough, and it seemed to me huge, and this industrial thing was really something that concerned me. On the other sign that you had, the one on the side, it seems like that one also would need to come back maybe and combine with paint in the road, right? Both of those would be
Yes.
combined with paint in the road.
Yes. I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. Some other things we had looked at on the left side here, if you go to the top, we can put some pavement markings in there that says 36 in the laneage. I wasn't able to get those in the visual, but that's kind of where they would go. And we had also looked at the smaller cluster signage, similar to what you see coming across from the Louisville side right now. It's tough to see. It's pretty busy. You really don't get much out of it if you're going slightly over the speed limit. And then if we didn't do the stone look, you would have the signposts like you would usually see. So these are all options.
That overhead one, I think, is too late where you've got it. By then people could be in the roadway already.
Yeah, we were trying to
I
give
thought
you
this was
a feel. We're trying to give a feel for what it looks like. Ultimately, CDOT's going to dictate the comfort level for that sign. So I don't want to lose the focus of the concept and getting into where the sign needs to be. That'll be kind of dictated by standards.
So-
yeah, we need direction on.
So the sign that is sitting off to the side, to me, that's not very intuitive. I mean, I'm in a hurry, and I'm not necessarily going to. Maybe not me. I'm talking about everybody. You may not assess that corresponds to the 3 lanes until you're kind of past it and go, oh yeah, sure. Oh, I'm in the wrong lane. So I like that overhead one, although I think it's a little cumbersome, kind of large, and it's should come forward a bit. I also like the fact that a reiterating sign at the very top where the lights are, and I see, there's 2 there, one that goes right and one that goes left. But if they, all 3, lanes would say something, you would see that further ahead as well.
They would. The 2 white ones you see here are the new ones. This would be the existing. There is one there now.
Okay.
There would be one in all 3 at the Mastar. At the same.
So, I mean, I don't think just one sign is going to do it. I think that, especially since this is going to be completely new to drivers, and I'm sure there'll be a learning curve with that. But, I mean, for me, I don't look over there. I kind of, unless I'm going to turn right, I will look there. But if I'm going to go in the middle or go left, I'm not going to look there. At least that's my line of vision when I'm driving there. And reason why I say that is because there's many times there's a car right there, and I don't see it until I've gone past it, and I'm not sure that they see me.
But at least they're not calling it a double left, or a double right. Both you and I thought that meant no going into the Conoco, right?
Right.
And you're going to have signage on the pole, and then whatever the board decides they want to do, additionals, and then you can have markings on the roadway on top of that.
I believe the goal here is clear communication, pure and simple. And I think that the thing people are calling cumbersome, I know that's just what we're used to seeing. In a situation like this, you're not going to pay attention to any cumbersome nature. It's clarity of communication. And so I'm with what I've heard the other people say. I like the big sign. I like Deborah's addition for the repetitive sign at the red light. My concern here is you've got a rain event, and you're not looking that way. You've got a snow event where it sticks against the sign, et cetera, et cetera. To me, this option spells trouble, where the other option spells possibility of success, especially if we repeat on the pavement and repeat at the red light. I don't think we can repeat too often. people aren't going to say, my, they've repeated 3 times. They're going to see, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to do here.
Sure. And just as another option that's not shown is no signage. I mean, we could do the striping in the road and the additional pavement markings. We could do the signage at the intersection. There are some of the triple Fs in the state do not have any overhead signage. This is an area where I think we get a lot of repeat or commuter traffic. So incremental improvement is also an option.
What's the cost of doing just that? So if
That
we're going
would
to do
be
both anyway, why wouldn't we
probably about
just do...
$55,000. Still the 15 to get it in through the review and final design. And 40.
So just the striping and then the on the street? 'Cause if we're going to do both, it seems like, why don't we just do that first and see how effective it is before we spend the additional money to put a big sign? Because I'm not real keen on the big sign going across, because to me, that's not superior.
And I should say that one of the things we talked about last time was, there are advantages to each, I'm not, but one of the things we talked about is if they did do the overhead sign, it still doesn't mean that we're committed to forever saying that this is the only way we're going to solve the problem, that if we decided to go back to this configuration, that this third left lane or whatever didn't get us any good, we could change the overhead signs to be corresponding to whatever new lanes were. So that doesn't commit us to 3 signs and forever and ever. We can modify those signs even with that behemoth overhead thing.
Public comment regarding this particular issue?
Bruce Kuffner, 109 South 4th. You're creating the same problem as you got on the west side. When you run 3 lanes to the north, you got Boulder, Louisville, and Denver. You got traffic coming out of the Superior Plaza over there. What are we going to do about all this traffic on one side? Both sides are going like this, like we got now. We're going to close that road off and have them come over to the stoplight, because at the present time you can only get in at the stoplight when you come from the north this way. But we do have a problem there. I don't see it there. And you got 2 lanes up above 2nd Avenue going into 4. You got a right turn and 3 lanes going to the left. We have a problem now getting over from 2nd Avenue, from 4th Avenue to 2nd Avenue with the people coming out of Superior Marketplace. I don't know, you better take a little more consideration about running all this traffic together. I think that we're starting at the wrong end is where our problem is people getting on the turnpike in the morning going to work. It's backed up over the cemetery and over the hill. I don't know how far, but I hit every day trying to get on that turnpike 5-10 mile an hour. We've created a problem there by double that lane going into Boulder like we got it. I think that some consideration ought to be done of where our priorities are to relieve the traffic. So when we back up over here a little bit, it's going to make it more difficult for us to get out of the town of Superior on 2nd and 1st Avenue. Guaranteed. Because you got that other traffic moving over to the right to go to Denver. How many they run a traffic count of how many cars actually go to Denver on both sides from coming out of Superior Plaza and the other place? I've never heard of a traffic count. I've never seen a traffic counted, period. And I travel day in and day out. It's a good idea. We got to do something with the traffic. I agree with you 100%, but there's something needs to be done on the north side. A little bit live up their obligations, Mayor, is what the problem is, and that's why we're backing up all over the place. We've got to relieve the beginning of it.
George,
Thank
I'd
you.
like to say that I completely agree with you. So, things need to happen with the intersection, and things need to happen with the merging, and I think that we all agree with that, and we're all on the same page, but you have to do some things first. The other problem is going to be is this is not going to be a long-term solution when the town center is in place, because that's going to make the turning very difficult if there's a lot of volume coming out of the town center, because we'd have to do turning movements that would, I assume, would stop one side and allow the other turns to go. which isn't the best solution, but.
I think it'd be ought to give some thought.
A good point you've refreshed my memory, George. Coming out of Superior Plaza, how do we see the triple left working with the facing traffic coming and turning left out of Superior Plaza?
You got the signal?
Yeah. How's that all
At the
going to
signal
work?
or just north of the signal?
North of the signal,
Coming out of Boulder Ice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of traffic that cuts across, uses that through lane, goes into Superior Plaza, and then back out, and then turns right out of there to go over to Boulder or go to Denver.
But how do we see three lefts working with the people coming out of Boulder Ice? Isn't that Superior Plaza?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think, pretty much where the number one is on the screen, right?
No. She's talking at the signal.
It's a little
Across
south, a little
the-
farther south.
Right.
You're right here?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the signal time will be such that that'll be split. So when they're coming left, the people coming out the other way will be stopped. You always have gaps at some points in time, and they can certainly turn right on red. So it's just normal traffic flow.
Okay. Just timed.
Yeah, timing.
Okay. We need to, it looks like we have some more public comment.
Yeah, I want to add one. In theory, it wouldn't change from what it is right now.
Yes.
If you take a right out, you go into a right turn only lane.
Yeah, but if you take a left out, right now
Your
you've got
timing-
one going straight
Right.
and one going left.
You would just
So-
be a difference in the phase. You get a different point. Same amount of weight.
It's phased currently now.
Yeah.
And isn't this trying to make it so that the signal doesn't have to be green as long to get more cars out?
Same timing.
Yeah.
Same time.
So it won't be a longer, it'll be the same or short.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. Actually, I didn't rise on that point, but I asked that question at the last meeting, and it was answered at the time. And it will change the configuration if you're coming out of Superior Plaza. So right now, you can make a left turn to go south to Rock Creek at the same time that these cars are making a left turn to go north. And the answer I was given last time was that with this new configuration, you'd have to stop and do one at a time. So you would have a long wait, a much longer wait anyway, coming out of Superior Plaza if you're going south to Rock Creek. But anyway, my point, I was just going to make a comment about this, the overhead sign. When this came up at the last meeting, even some of you members of the board had expressed the concern that the problems coming off of 36 were equal or maybe even greater than the problems going from Marshall on to McCaslin. And a number of in the room didn't even realize that you can come off of the exit and go to the light and make a right turn, which is a much safer and easier way if you're going into the two left-hand lanes if you're heading south. And I do that all the time, and I've never seen anyone else do it, quite frankly. But at any rate, when I asked the question, not offline at that last meeting, I was told that originally it was in the plan to put overhead signs coming off of 36, but at that time it was vetoed for money or for whatever reason. And I'm just making the observation that, therefore, all these years later, nobody even really knows about that turn. So I think it is important, if we're going to do it, to have proper signage.
Okay.
I'm trying to be good and not address that intersection again after last time.
I promise we'll address it.
I understand.
It is kind of frustrating to sit there and everybody else
Right.
is turning, and you're like waiting for the light to turn.
Yep.
And they're all going, turning.
All right, so need staff direction on how to proceed. I think I guess we could get a vote unless people are opposed to analyzing this
I
anymore.
have one more question.
Yeah.
Kurt, if, I understand we're not doing anything about expanding the right turn only lane at this initially, how long would it take to make that fix when we realize we need to?
I mean, you can allocate money as a budget amendment at any time. If you want to have it fall within a budget cycle, it might be a year and a half out, depending on where we pull that trigger. But if you say, here's the money, go do it, and we hit it within the summer, we could do it within that construction season, or even in the winter if it's light enough weather. So, I mean, those improvements there, 30 to 60 days improvements, and I'm probably patting.
Because we need CDOT's approval for that as well.
Oh, can we,
I mean, fairly quickly though. Where there's a will, there's a way.
So I guess my only comments, I think this is going to be a benefit, and I agree with Trustee Hansen on this occasion that I think we should do this incrementally. And, you know, I think I might start with the paint to begin with and then go from there.
It allows you to go backwards if everyone
Sort of the
says
same
we
thing
don't
as we
want
did
to.
as the underpass, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I mean, I'd take it just a tiny step forward, or further than that. Painting the lanes and then putting the signage at the red light.
Yeah. Because that's going to be there anyway, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
And then see how it goes and go from there.
I, on the other hand, am going to learn from Jim's lesson that if you don't teach people the right way when you make the change, you start embedding negative behaviors that don't change over time. So I'd like to see us do it fully at the outset.
And I agree with Trustee Pennington with the overhead from the get-go for that same reason.
So, so I think we can all, when this comes back, you know, when you do the design, then we can just have a checklist of what we do.
Actually, we need
I would
to-
add
Yeah, I
that.
think today we're at that point where we need to
Because we
kind
need
of.
to get
You need
CDOT's
direct-
approval.
We do.
I'm
Yeah, but
trying to
do you
do
need-
that here, but,
So you need a vote.
On the sign right now?
yeah.
We will take the direction from today and finalize that and submit that to CDOT. So they'll want to see exactly what we're going
Can't,
to do.
can't you
Okay.
give them options? I mean,
Can
Can you
you,
provide them like a
Can you
phase
request a
2,
sign?
I guess we could submit a phased plan.
Uh-huh.
We could, yeah.
depending on,
does
For
that
the
mean we
phase
have
could
to
be
follow
30.
through on the final phase, which would be the overhead sign?
Yes, phase 2
Well,
I
yes,
think
they
would be the
approve.
overhead sign, and I don't believe we would have to follow through. So, yes, Mayor, we could phase it. We could look at that.
I think that would give us the board the most flexibility when this comes back, so.
So we could request the overhead sign, but not necessarily implement it only if needed.
Well,
What I think,
Is
what
that
I'm
what you're
hearing is
saying?
we would design it, the full solution, and we would phase it, big sign, phase 2. We'd probably go ahead and bid this. Add alternate would be the sign, and then you can choose at the time of the contract approval if you want to purchase that or not.
Because if we're building that sign, I'd like to see different, you know, pole standards or whatever, because I can't believe that
Right.
that's the only one that you could choose from.
there's,
So,
might be some things with color or paint we can do there.
yeah. All right. Does that sound fair to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for a very detailed presentation. Let's see. That brings us to item number 11. So, an executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-402.4.e regarding the Jefferson Parkway, and to consider purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-402.4.a. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session by Trustee Gregorius. Is there a second? Trustee Williams, all in favor? Unanimous. We're in executive session. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.